The wrench slipped. Frank Callahan caught it before it hit the floor. His 72-year-old reflexes still sharp enough to save a $10 tool from becoming a broken piece of metal. The sink drain beneath his calloused hands was corroded beyond repair, like everything else at Naval Amphibious Base Coronado. The base was old. Oh, the plumbing was older, and Frank was oldest of all. He twisted the wrench one final time, felt the satisfying click of threading, catching properly, and wiped his hands on the rag tucked into his belt. The briefing room's sink would hold for another 6 months. Maybe longer if the young SEAL candidates actually washed their hands instead of just running water and walking out. Kids these days had no respect for infrastructure, no respect for anything really. Frank straightened up slowly, feeling every one of his years in the small of his back. The California sun poured through the windows of the SEAL Team 5 briefing room, catching dust motes and beams of gold. Outside, young men in their 20s ran obstacle courses, their bodies perfect machines of muscle and youth. Inside, an old man packed his tools into a battered red box that had seen 5 decades of use. He was invisible to them. The pipe man, the janitor, the old guy who fixed toilets and never said much. That was exactly how Frank wanted it. His Ford F-150 sat in the parking lot where it had sat every morning for the past 12 years. A 1998 model, forest green with 200,000 miles on the odometer and a temperament as stubborn as its owner. Frank threw his toolbox in the bed, heard the familiar clang of metal on metal, and climbed behind the wheel. The truck started on the third try. It always started on the third try. Some things you could count on. The drive back to Imperial Beach took 20 minutes through traffic that never seemed to ease. San Diego had grown too big, too fast. Too many people chasing too little space. Frank remembered when this whole corridor was strawberry fields and empty lots. Before the tech money came. Before the military expansion. Before everything changed. But that was the way of things. The world moved forward, left old men behind. Frank's trailer park sat 3 blocks from the ocean, close enough to hear the waves at night, far enough that the tourists never wandered down his street. Lot 47, a single wide trailer with aluminum siding that had faded from white to the color of old bones. Home. He parked in his usual spot, noticed Mrs. Henderson from Lot 49 watching him from behind her curtains the way she always did, and unlocked his front door. The interior was neat to the point of military precision, dishes washed and put away, bed made with hospital corners. Not a single item out of place. The habit of order never died, no matter how many years you spent pretending to be someone else. Frank opened the refrigerator. 3 beers, a package of deli turkey, half a jar of pickles, and a carton of milk 2 days past expiration. Bachelor food. Old man food. The kind of meals you ate when there was nobody left to cook for. He grabbed a beer, twisted off the cap, and sat down at his small kitchen table. The vinyl chair creaked under his weight. 190 pounds. 30 pounds lighter than he weighed in 1980, the muscle gone soft and south. Old age was gravity winning a long war. On the table sat a photograph in a cheap frame. Frank picked it up, studied the faces he had memorized years ago. A young woman with dark hair and a smile that could light up rooms. Beside her, a boy of maybe 10, gap-toothed and grinning, holding up a fish he had caught on a pier in Oceanside. Margaret and Michael, his wife and son. Past tense on the wife, complicated tense on the son. Margaret had died 2 years ago. Cancer. The fast kind. By the time they found it, there was nothing to do but make her comfortable and say goodbye. She had divorced Frank 20 years before that, taken Michael with her, and built a new life that did not include a man who woke up screaming 3 nights out of 7. Frank did not blame her. Some things could not be fixed, and he had been broken long before they met. The nightmares had started in 1970, East Berlin, a covert operation that went sideways in ways that still classified 54 years later. Frank and his SEAL team had been tasked with extracting a defecting Soviet scientist from a safe house near Checkpoint Charlie. Simple in and out, except the scientist was bait. The KGB knew they were coming, knew everything. Someone had talked. Someone always talked. Frank's team walked into an ambush in a warehouse district 3 blocks from the wall. 4 men died in the first 30 seconds. Automatic weapons fire from 3 directions. No cover, no escape. Frank took a bullet in the leg and went down hard. woke up in a basement cell with his hands chained above his head and blood crusted on his face. The interrogator's grunt name was Ivan Volkov, 24 years old, Spetsnaz, KGB, eyes like blue ice and a smile that belonged on something that ate children. Volkov spoke perfect English with a Moscow accent that turned every word into a threat. He wore a silver ring on his right hand, red star with a scorpion engraved in the center. Frank saw that ring up close many times over the next 10 months. Volkov tried everything: pliers on fingernails, electrical shocks, water torture, sleep deprivation, psychological warfare. He wanted the names of other CIA assets in Eastern Europe, wanted operational details, wanted Frank to betray everything he had sworn to protect. Frank never broke, never gave them anything except blood and screams and stubborn American silence. The escape came in April 1971. A SEAL rescue team breached the facility during a shift change, killed 16 KGB officers and extracted 3 American prisoners. Volkov fled before they could capture him, disappeared into the Soviet security apparatus like smoke. Frank came home with 3 cracked ribs, 2 dislocated shoulders, and damage to his psyche that would never fully heal. The Navy gave him medals, Bronze Star, Purple Heart, commendations he never looked at. The CIA recruited him 6 months later, told him he had skills they needed, told him he could hunt the people who had hurt him, make them pay. Frank said yes because he did not know what else to do with the rage. For 14 years, Frank worked Special Activities Division, the black side, the side that did not exist on any organizational chart. He hunted war criminals across Europe and the Middle East, assassinated terrorists, conducted operations that would never appear in any history book. He killed 57 people for his country, 57 human beings who had families and dreams and futures, all ended by Frank's hand. He hunted Volkov for 12 of those years, followed leads across 3 continents, got close twice, Berlin in 1978, Prague in 1983, but Volkov was always one step ahead. Too good, too careful. In '91, Frank got word that Volkov had died in a car bombing in Moscow, FSB, internal purge after the Soviet collapse. One more casualty of a dying empire. Frank had opened a bottle of whiskey that night, toasted the dead, and tried to forget. But forgetting was harder than killing. Michael had grown up fine without him, better than fine. Naval Academy graduate, Stanford for his master's degree. SEAL Team 5 platoon commander at 42 years old. Everything Frank had never been: educated, respected, clean, the kind of officer who made decisions based on principles instead of rage. They worked on the same base. Frank fixed the pipes. Michael led men into combat. They saw each other maybe once a month, exchanged awkward nods in passing, never spoke about anything that mattered. That was fine. That was how it needed to be. Frank had nothing to offer his son except the stink of old wars and older regrets. Michael did not know about East Berlin, did not know about the 10 months in that cell, did not know his father had killed 57 people. Margaret had kept all of that buried. Told Michael his father worked maintenance for the Navy. Nothing more. Frank was grateful for the lie. Some truths were better left in the dark. He set the photo down, finished his beer, and checked his watch. 5:30 in the evening. The sun was setting over the Pacific, painting the sky in shades of orange and red that reminded him of tracer fire. Some memories never faded. They just waited in the back of your mind, patient as landmines. Frank stood, walked to his bedroom, and opened the closet. Behind his 4 work shirts and 2 pairs of jeans, hidden behind a false panel he had installed himself, was a space the size of a shoebox. Inside that space were things that did not belong in a retired plumber's life. A Colt 1911 pistol, .45 caliber, serial numbers filed off. The same sidearm Frank had carried for 8 years of SEAL operations and 14 years of CIA work. He had fired this weapon in 12 different countries, killed 23 men with it. The gun knew his hand better than any handshake. A K-bar knife, 7-inch blade, still sharp enough to shave with. Frank maintained it religiously every Sunday morning, honed the edge, oiled the leather grip. Some habits you never lost even when you tried. Dog tags on a chain, stamped with a name and service number that had been classified for 50 years. His real name, not Frank Callahan. That was the identity the CIA had given him in 1985 when everything fell apart. His real name was buried so deep that even he sometimes forgot it was there. And beneath all of it, wrapped in oilcloth, a folder containing documents that could send half of Langley to prison if they ever saw daylight. Insurance. Leverage. The reason Frank Callahan the plumber had lived unmolested for 5 decades while other operators from his era had accidents. Frank touched the pistol, felt the cold steel under his fingertips, and closed the panel. Not tonight. Tonight he would heat up some turkey, watch the news, and go to bed early. Tomorrow he would wake at 5, do his 100 push-ups, and drive back to the base. Same as every day for the past 12 years. Routine was survival. Routine kept the ghosts at bay. His phone rang. The landline, not the cell. Frank frowned. Nobody called the landline except telemarketers and the occasional wrong number. He picked up the receiver, said nothing. Silence on the other end. Then breathing. Measured. Deliberate. Then a voice he had not heard in 44 years. Franklin Callahan. Russian accent. Thick as Moscow winter. Each syllable a shard of ice. Frank's hand tightened on the receiver until his knuckles went white. His heartbeat spiked, adrenaline flooding his system the way it had not in decades. He knew that voice, knew it the way a man knows the sound of his own nightmares. The voice that had asked him questions in that basement cell. The voice that had promised pain if he did not answer. "You are supposed to be dead," Frank said. Laughter on the other end, low and rich and filled with malice. "As are you, my old friend. As are you, but here we both are, still breathing, still fighting, like cockroaches after the bomb. What do you want, Volkov?" Straight to business. Always so American. No pleasantries, no catching up on old times." A pause, the sound of a lighter clicking, cigarette smoke being inhaled. "I want what I have always wanted, Frank. I want to finish what we started, and this time I hold all the cards." Frank's mind raced through possibilities. Ivan Volkov, KGB, Spetsnaz, the man who had broken 3 of Frank's ribs and dislocated both his shoulders in an interrogation cell in East Berlin in 1970. The man Frank had hunted for 12 years across 3 continents. The man who had supposedly died in a car bomb in Moscow in 1991. "You died," Frank said. "I saw the reports. FSB internal purge. They blew up your car outside your apartment." "They blew up a car. I was already on a plane to Mexico City with $2 million in diamonds and a new passport. 33 years I have been building my empire, Frank. 33 years while you played at being a normal man. Fixed toilets, lived in a trailer, pretended the past was dead." Volkov laughed again. "But the past never dies. It just waits. And now, at the end of all things, we meet again." "I am not interested in settling old scores," Frank said. "Whatever you want, whatever game you are playing, I am out. I am done with that life." "Are you?" Volkov's voice turned cold, dangerous. "Then perhaps you will be interested in this." The line went silent for 3 seconds. Then a new sound, a voice, young, strained, familiar in a way that made Frank's chest tight. "Dad? Dad, if you can hear this, don't come. It's a trap. He wants you. He's been planning this for—" The voice cut off, a thud, a grunt of pain, someone hitting flesh. "Michael." Frank's world narrowed to a pinpoint. His breathing stopped. His vision tunneled. Every sound in the trailer disappeared except the blood pounding in his ears. When he spoke, his voice was flat and dead. "If you hurt him, I will find you, and I will make you beg for the mercy you never showed anyone." Volkov laughed again. The sound was colder this time, more satisfied. "There is the Frank Callahan I remember. The killer beneath the plumber's coveralls. The man who survived 10 months in my basement and never broke. Yes, I have your son, Frank. I have him and 3 of his friends. 4 young Navy SEALs. Such strong boys. Such brave boys. It would be a shame if something happened to them." "What do you want?" "I want you to come to Tijuana, alone, unarmed. I will send you the address. You have 18 hours. If you are not here by 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, I will kill one of these boys every hour until you arrive. And I will start with your son. I will use the same pliers I used on your fingernails. See if he screams louder than you did." "Why?" Frank asked. "Why now? After all these years? You built a new life, so did I. Why drag this back up?" "Because I am dying, Frank." Volkov's voice softened, almost gentle. "Cancer, pancreatic. The doctors give me 3 months. Maybe 4 if I am lucky. and I will not die with unfinished business. You escaped me once. You hunted me for 12 years. You cost me my career, my country, my life. I had to become someone else, just like you. And now, at the end, we settle accounts. You and me, old men with old grudges. This is how it ends. This is how it has always been going to end. The line went dead. Frank stood in his kitchen, phone in hand, staring at nothing. His heart hammered against his ribs. His mouth tasted like copper. Somewhere in the distance, Mrs. Henderson's television played a game show. Someone was winning a car. The audience applauded, life going on while Frank's world collapsed. He set down the phone with a hand that did not shake, walked to his bedroom, opened the closet, removed the false panel, took out the pistol, the knife, the dog tags, laid them on his bed in a neat row like a soldier preparing for inspection. He sat down on the edge of the mattress and stared at the objects that represented his old life, a life he had spent 50 years trying to bury, a life that had just clawed its way out of the grave and demanded one more dance. The smart play was to call the authorities, FBI, Navy, someone official with resources and jurisdiction. Let them handle it. That was what normal people did. That was what Frank the Plumber would do. But Frank the Plumber was a lie, a comfortable fiction, a mask worn so long he had almost forgotten the face underneath. His real name was not Frank Callahan. His real name was buried in classified files so deep that even the people who had written them had forgotten they existed. His real record showed 8 years in Navy SEAL Team 1 from 1970 to 1978, 4 tours and classified operations across Eastern Europe and the Middle East, 73 confirmed kills, 2 Bronze Stars and a Purple Heart, 10 months as a prisoner during a covert operation in East Berlin, where a KGB officer named Ivan Volkov had tried and failed to break him. After his SEAL career, Frank had been recruited into CIA Special Activities Division, the black side, the side that did not exist on any organizational chart. For 14 years, he had hunted war criminals, assassinated terrorists, and conducted operations that would never appear in any history book. He had killed 57 people for his country, 57 human beings who had families and dreams and futures, all ended by Frank's hand. In 1985, his handler had given him an order he could not follow: terminate a United States senator's aide who was attempting to expose the truth about intelligence operations gone wrong, specifically operations that had resulted in the abandonment of American prisoners in Soviet facilities across Eastern Europe. Men left behind because it was politically inconvenient to acknowledge they existed. The aide's name was James Wu, Captain James Wu, United States Army, Frank's cellmate for 4 months in that East German facility. The man who had kept Frank sane when the interrogations got too bad. The man who had shared his rations when Frank was too weak to eat. The man who had whispered prayers in the dark when Frank thought he was going to die. Frank had refused the order, told his handler that some lines could not be crossed, that betraying the men who saved you was worse than any enemy action, that leaving prisoners behind was bad enough without murdering the people who tried to bring them home. The CIA had given him 2 choices: take a desk job in Virginia and never speak of it again, or disappear completely with a new identity and generous pension. Frank had chosen to disappear. 3 weeks later, James Wu had died in a car accident. Single vehicle collision on a rainy night outside Arlington. No witnesses. The investigation ruled it mechanical failure. Brake lines corroded. Frank knew better. He had installed brake lines himself during his training, knew exactly how to make them fail at the right moment. He had spent the last 50 years as a ghost. Frank Callahan, plumber. Frank Callahan, the quiet guy who showed up on time and fixed your pipes and never caused trouble. Frank Callahan, the man nobody looked at twice. And now Ivan Volkov had found him. Volkov, who should have been dead. Volkov, who had Michael. Frank stood, walked to his kitchen, pulled a beer from the refrigerator and dumped it down the sink. He needed clarity, not comfort. He opened a drawer, removed a small notebook filled with phone numbers and addresses written in a code only he understood, found the entry he needed, dialed a number with a 619 area code. The phone rang 4 times. A man answered. Old voice, rough from years of cigarettes and whiskey. Yeah, Gunny, it is Frank. Silence, then, Frank Callahan. Jesus Christ, I thought you fell off the earth. It has been what, 10 years? 12. I need hardware, off the books, tonight. Another pause, longer this time. This is not a social call, is it? No. How much trouble are you in? All of it. The man on the other end exhaled slowly. Frank could picture him. Gerald McGraw, Gunny, 75 years old now. They had run operations together back when both of them were young and stupid and thought they would live forever. My shop closes at 9. Come to the back door. And Frank, whatever you are planning, I hope you know what you are doing. I do not, Frank said, but I am doing it anyway. He hung up, checked his watch. 7:15. He had time. Frank went to his bedroom and changed clothes. Black jeans, black long-sleeve shirt, work boots with good tread. He pulled on a jacket to cover the empty holster on his hip, checked himself in the mirror. An old man stared back, gray hair cut military short, face lined with 72 years of sun and stress, eyes that had seen too much and remembered all of it. He looked like what he was, a relic. A leftover from a different time when wars were fought by men instead of drones, when you looked into the eyes of the people you killed, when honor meant something more than a word. Frank grabbed his truck keys and walked out into the night. Mrs. Henderson's curtains twitched as he passed. He wondered what she would think when the police came asking questions. Probably nothing. Probably would not even remember his face. That was the blessing of being invisible. Nobody noticed when you disappeared. The drive to Chula Vista took 30 minutes. Gerald Gunny McGraw's gun shop sat in a strip mall between a taqueria and a tax preparation office. The front windows were dark, the closed sign hanging crooked in the door. Frank drove around to the alley behind the building, parked next to a dumpster that smelled like rotting meat, and knocked on the back door. The door opened 6 inches. An eye peered through the gap. Then the door swung wide. Gunny McGraw looked older than God and twice as mean. 75 years old, built like a fire hydrant, with a white beard that reached his chest and arms, covered in Marine Corps tattoos from wars Frank tried not to remember. He had served 3 tours in classified operations as a Force Recon Marine during the same era Frank ran with the SEALs, then stayed in for 20 more years until his knees gave out. Now he sold guns to people who needed them and did not ask too many questions. Frank Callahan, Gusney said, I will be damned. You look like hammered shit. Feel worse than I look. What is it, debt collectors? Ex-wife? Worse. Gunny waited. He was good at waiting. Had learned patience in jungles where the wrong sound got you killed. Someone took my son, Frank said. SEALs. Team 5. 4 of them captured in Mexico. I have 18 hours to get them out. Gunny's expression did not change. You are going to cross into Mexico alone at 72 years old to take on what? Cartel soldiers? About 100 of them. 100. Gunny shook his head slowly. Frank, I knew you were crazy back in the day, but this is suicide. Probably. Why not call the Navy, the FBI? Hell, call the damn Marines. This is their job. They will not move fast enough. And the man who has my son, he wants me. This is personal. From a long time ago, from Berlin. Understanding flickered in Gunny's eyes. Everyone who had worked classified operations in the 70s knew about Berlin, knew about the cells, knew about the men who never came home. Volkov? Frank nodded. I thought he died. Car bomb, Moscow, 91. So did I. Turns out we were both wrong. Gunny studied Frank's face for a long moment. Then he sighed, walked to a locked cabinet, and opened it with a key from his belt. How much cash you got? 10,000 in a safe deposit box. Keep it. This is on the house. Consider it a retirement gift. Gunny started pulling weapons from the cabinet. You will need something with stopping power but light enough to carry. MP5 good? MP5 is perfect. Suppressed or loud? Suppressed. I need to be quiet going in. Gunny set an HK MP5 submachine gun on the workbench. Added 430 round magazines already loaded. 9mm. You remember how to field strip one of these? Some things you never forget. Good. You will also need a sidearm. Gunny reached for a Glock 19. 17 rounds, 1 in the chamber, 3 magazines. I have my 1911. Gunny snorted. That dinosaur? Frank, this is not 1970. You need capacity, not nostalgia. The 1911 has never failed me. Suit yourself. What else? Explosives? C4 if you have it, couple pounds, and grenades. Gunny opened another cabinet, pulled out a block of plastic explosive the size of a brick, wrapped in military green packaging, added detonators and a simple timer. Then 4 M67 fragmentation grenades and 6 flashbangs. You planning on starting a war? Planning on ending one. Night vision? If you have it. Gunny retrieved an old PVS-7 night vision monocular. Army surplus. Battery life is maybe 4 hours. Do not drop it. Frank examined the equipment laid out on the bench. Enough firepower to level a city block or get one old man killed very quickly. I appreciate this, Gunny. Do not thank me yet. You might not live long enough. Gunny pulled a duffel bag from under the bench and started packing the weapons. Where in Mexico? Tijuana. You know how to get across? I have some ideas. There are tunnels near Smuggler's Gulch. Cartel uses them to move product north. You can go south the same way. But Frank, listen to me. Those cartel boys are not like the soldiers we fought. They are psychopaths. They will skin you alive just to watch you scream. I have dealt with worse. Maybe 50 years ago, you are not that man anymore. Frank met Gunny's eyes. I guess we will find out. Gunny finished packing the duffel, zipped it closed, and handed it to Frank. The bag weighed maybe 60 pounds. Frank took it without effort. Some things muscle memory never forgot. One more thing, Gunny said. He walked to a drawer, removed a small metal tin, and opened it. Inside were pills, tiny white tablets. Dextroamphetamine, military issue from back in the day. We used to call them go pills. They will keep you awake, keep you sharp. Take one every 6 hours. No more than that or your heart will explode. You are giving me speed? I am giving you a fighting chance. At 72, you are going to need every advantage. Gunny pressed the tin into Frank's hand. And Frank, if you make it back, you owe me a drink. Something expensive. Deal. Frank shouldered the duffel bag and walked to the door. His hand was on the knob when Gunny spoke again. Hey, Frank, your boy, what is his name? Michael. You are a good father, doing this for him. Frank paused. No, I am not. A good father would have been there for him his whole life, would have gone to his baseball games and helped him with homework. I was not any of those things. This is just me trying to make up for 50 years of failure in one night. Sometimes one night is all you get. Frank nodded and walked out into the alley. The duffel bag went into the bed of his truck. He climbed behind the wheel, started the engine on the third try, and drove south toward the border. The 805 freeway was light on traffic at this hour. Frank took it all the way down to the last exit before Mexico, got off at Dairy Mart Road, and headed west toward the ocean. Smuggler's Gulch was a canyon that ran along the border fence, a no-man's land where the U.S. ended and Mexico began, with nothing but rusted metal and desperate people in between. Frank parked his truck in a grocery store parking lot, grabbed the duffel bag, and walked into the darkness. The canyon was steep and treacherous. Loose rocks shifted under his boots. His knee complained with every step, the old injury from a helicopter crash in Laos, flaring hot and angry. He ignored it. Pain was information. It told you that you were still alive. At the bottom of the canyon, the border fence rose 15 feet high. Rusted metal slats with gaps you could see through but not squeeze between. Frank followed the fence line east for half a mile until he found what he was looking for. A drainage tunnel, 4 feet in diameter, running under the fence from north to south. The tunnel smelled like sewage and desperation. Frank clicked on a small flashlight, shouldered the duffel, and crawled inside. The concrete was slick with things he did not want to identify. His back scraped against the tunnel ceiling. His knees ground against the floor. 72 years old and crawling through a drainage pipe like a rat. His younger self would have laughed. The tunnel ran for maybe 200 yards before it opened on the Mexican side. Frank emerged into darkness, checked his surroundings, and moved quickly away from the border. Tijuana sprawled before him, millions of lights stretching to the horizon. Somewhere in that city, his son was waiting. Alive or dead, Frank would know soon enough. He found an abandoned building 3 blocks from the border and climbed to the second floor. Set up a position by a broken window with sight lines to the street below. Checked his phone. A text message had arrived while he was in the tunnel. Unknown number, GPS coordinates, and an address. Avenida Revolucion, the heart of Tijuana's tourist district. Frank pulled up the coordinates on his phone's map. A warehouse 6 blocks from the main strip. 3 stories, surrounded by other industrial buildings. He opened the duffel bag and began assembling his gear. The MP5 fit together smoothly, each piece clicking into place with satisfying precision. He loaded a magazine, chambered a round, and set it aside. The Glock 19 went into a thigh holster. The 1911 went into his waistband at the small of his back. Old habit, always have a backup. The plate carrier was next. Old military surplus, modified with modern ballistic plates. It fit snugly over his chest, distributing the weight across his shoulders. Not perfect, but better than nothing. He added magazine pouches, grenade pouches, medical kit. By the time he finished, he was carrying 40 pounds of equipment. Frank checked toward his watch, 11:30 at night. He had 14 and a half hours until Volkov's deadline. Time to do some reconnaissance. The streets of Tijuana were busy even at midnight. Tourists stumbling between bars. Street vendors selling tacos and trinkets. Music pouring from every doorway. Frank moved through it all, just another old man in dark clothes, invisible in the crowd. The warehouse sat at the end of a dead-end street. No traffic, no pedestrians, just industrial buildings and chain-link fences. Frank circled the perimeter twice, studying angles and approaches. Guards on the roof, 4 of them, rotating patrols on the ground level, 8 men with automatic weapons, not cartel punks. These moved with military precision. Frank found an abandoned office building across the street, 5 stories tall, with a fire escape that still looked functional. He climbed slowly, his knees screaming with each step, until he reached the roof. Set up an observation post behind an old air conditioning unit, pulled out a small pair of binoculars. The warehouse was lit up like Christmas. Floodlights on the roof, spotlights on the perimeter. In the courtyard, Frank could see vehicles. 2 armored SUVs, black, expensive, drug money purchased. He settled in to watch. Patience was a virtue he had learned in sniper school 50 years ago. Patience and the ability to remain absolutely still while your body screamed at you to move. 2 hours passed. Guard rotations every 30 minutes. Clockwork precision. At 1:45 in the morning, a door opened on the 3rd floor of the warehouse. A man stepped out onto a small balcony. Frank focused his binoculars and felt his heart stop. The man was tall, gaunt, white hair. Even from 200 yards away, Frank recognized him. Ivan Volkov, older, thinner, but unmistakably him. He stood on the balcony smoking a cigar, looking out over his empire with the satisfaction of a man who had won. Frank's finger itched for a trigger. One shot, center mass, end it right now, but he could not. Not until he knew where Michael was. Not until the other SEALs were safe. Volkov finished his cigar and went back inside. The lights on the 3rd floor went dark. Frank lowered his binoculars, checked his watch. 2 in the morning, 12 hours until the deadline. Time to make a plan. He could not go in alone through the front door. That was suicide. He could not call for backup. That was politics and bureaucracy, and men who would make decisions based on policies instead of lives. No, this had to be surgical, precise, the way Frank had done it 50 years ago when precision mattered more than protocols. His phone buzzed. Another text message. This one contained a video file. Frank's hands shook as he opened it. The video showed 4 men, chained to chairs in a concrete room, beaten, bloodied, but alive. Frank recognized his son immediately. Michael sat in the center, his face swollen but defiant. Next to him, 3 other young SEALs, all of them looking at the camera with the hard eyes of men who knew what was coming. Volkov's voice played over the footage. 18 hours, Frank. The clock is ticking. Come alone, come unarmed, or watch them die. The video ended. Frank sat in the darkness on that rooftop and felt something he had not felt in 50 years. Not fear, not anger, something colder, something that lived in the space between thought and action. Purpose. He opened the tin of white pills Gunny had given him, took one, swallowed it dry, felt it hit his system like electricity. His fatigue vanished, his pain receded, his mind sharpened to a razor's edge. Frank stood, shouldered his gear, and began the long climb down to the street below. Somewhere in that warehouse, his son was waiting. And Frank Callahan, the man who had spent 50 years hiding from himself, was about to remember exactly who he used to be. The old warrior was awake, and God help anyone who stood in his way. Dawn came to Tijuana like a rumor, gray light bleeding through smog and distance, turning the city from black to charcoal to something that resembled hope if you squinted hard enough. Frank Callahan watched it happen from his perch on the rooftop, his body stiff from 4 hours of absolute stillness. The amphetamine had done its job. No fatigue, no drowsiness, just the crystalline clarity of a mind running at speeds it had not reached in 50 years. His phone showed 5:30 in the morning, 8.5 hours until Volkov's deadline. Below him, the warehouse remained lit and guarded. The patrols had not changed. 8 men on the ground, 4 on the roof, all of them armed with automatic weapons, all of them professionals. Frank had counted them so many times he could see them in his sleep. Guard 1, northeast corner, smoking a cigarette every 40 minutes like clockwork. Guard 2, southwest perimeter, checking his phone constantly, probably texting a girlfriend. Guard 3, the careful one, never in the same position twice. The one Frank would need to kill first. They were good, not great, but good enough to make this difficult. His knee throbbed despite the pills. His lower back felt like someone had driven railroad spikes through his spine. 72 years old and preparing for combat, the universe had a sick sense of humor. Frank climbed down from the roof, moving slowly, testing each step before committing his weight. The fire escape groaned under him, metal fatigued from decades of sun and salt air. He reached the ground and moved into the alley behind the office building, staying in shadows, invisible to the world that was waking up around him. He needed more intelligence, needed to know the interior layout, needed to understand where they were keeping Michael and the other SEALs. Volkov would not make it easy. Men like him never did. They built layers of security like other men built walls, paranoid and thorough. Frank's phone buzzes. He pulled it out, checked the screen. A text message from an unknown number. Not Volkov this time, someone else. Callahan, we need to talk. Starbucks on Avenida Revolucion, 30 minutes. Come alone. No signature, no identification. But Frank knew a summons when he saw one. Someone had been watching him. Someone knew he was here. That was both concerning and potentially useful. He considered ignoring it, considered walking away and sticking to his plan. But curiosity was a hard habit to break, and 50 years in the intelligence business had taught him that information came from unexpected places. Sometimes the best intelligence was the intelligence that found you. Frank checked his gear. The MP5 went into a duffel bag covered with old clothes to look like laundry. The Glock stayed in his thigh holster under his jacket. The 1911 remained at the small of his back. He looked like a tired old man carrying his washing to a laundromat. Perfect camouflage. The walk to Avenida Revolucion took 15 minutes. The street was already alive with vendors setting up stalls, blankets covered with cheap jewelry and knockoff sunglasses. The smell of corn tortillas and frying meat mixed with exhaust fumes and ocean salt. Tijuana waking up to another day of survival and hustle. The Starbucks sat on a corner, glass windows facing the street. Inside, morning commuters lined up for overpriced coffee and pastries that cost more than most Mexicans made in a day. Frank scanned the interior through the window. Most tables were empty. One table in the back corner held a single occupant. A woman, late 60s, short gray hair cut in a practical bob, khaki pants and a windbreaker. The kind of outfit field agents wore when they wanted to blend in but still needed access to a weapon. She saw Frank looking and nodded once. Frank entered the coffee shop, ordered a black coffee from a teenager who looked half asleep and completely disinterested, paid with cash, walked to the back table and sat down without asking permission. The woman studied him with eyes that had seen too much. Blue eyes, cold as Arctic ice. A small scar ran along her jawline, barely visible unless you knew to look for it. The kind of scar you got from shrapnel or broken glass. Combat scar. You look like hell, Callahan. Frank sipped his coffee, burned his tongue. You look familiar. Should I? We worked together. Afghanistan, 1987. You were sad. I was Army intelligence, liaison officer for the Mujahideen operations. We coordinated supply drops and intelligence briefings out of a compound in Kabul that smelled like diesel fuel and goat shit. Frank searched his memory, pulled up fragments from 37 years ago. A forward operating base in Kabul, dusty compounds and rocket attacks that came at dawn. And yes, an Army captain who coordinated logistics and kept her head when mortars were falling. Sharp, competent, never complained even when the situation was completely fucked. Hendricks, Frank said. Chief Warrant Officer Sarah Hendricks, retired 2015. Now I work DEA liaison in San Diego. And before you ask, yes, I know why you are here. I know what happened to your son. And I know you are about to do something monumentally stupid. Frank set down his coffee. If you are here to stop me, you are wasting your time. I am not here to stop you. I am here to help you, or at least make sure you do not get yourself killed in the first 5 minutes. Sarah leaned forward. Frank, I have been tracking this situation since yesterday afternoon. 4 Navy SEALs missing in Mexico. Mexican authorities claiming no knowledge. Our government unable or unwilling to act. And then I see your name pop up in a facial recognition alert at the border. Frank Callahan, a man who has been dead for 40 years according to official records. You ran me through facial recognition? DEA has cameras at all the major crossing points. When your face pinged, I pulled your file, or what is left of it. Most of it is redacted, but I know enough. SEAL Team 1, CIA SAD, 57 confirmed kills, blacklisted in 1985 for refusing an order, disappeared with a new identity. Sarah smiled without warmth. You were a legend in the community, the operator who said no. That legend is retired. Clearly not. You crossed into Mexico last night carrying enough weapons to start a small war, which means you are planning to attack the warehouse where Ivan Volkov is holding your son and 3 other SEALs hostage. Frank said nothing, watched her carefully, calculated angles. She was alone, no backup visible. But that did not mean backup was not there. Why would you help me? Frank asked finally. Sarah leaned back in her chair, took a sip of her own coffee. Kabul, November 1987. Soviet ambush on Highway 2. You pulled me out of a burning Humvee and carried me 2 kilometers to the extraction point. I had 3 cracked ribs and a concussion. You saved my life. I owe you. Frank remembered. The smoke, the screaming. A young captain trapped in a vehicle that was about to explode. He had not thought about it in years. Just another mission in a long string of missions that all bled together after enough time. But she remembered. She had carried it for 37 years. You do not owe me anything. That was the job. Maybe, but I pay my debts anyway. Sarah reached into her jacket and pulled out a tablet computer, set it on the table between them. I have been tracking the situation with your son. DEA has had eyes on Ivan Volkov for 3 years. We know what he is. We know what he does. Fentanyl trafficking. Largest pipeline from China through Mexico into California. He is responsible for 15,000 overdose deaths in San Diego County alone since 2020. Frank stared at the tablet. Why have you not arrested him? Politics, Mexican sovereignty, corrupt officials on both sides of the border. Take your pick. We have requested extradition 6 times. Mexico denies every request. They say he is a Mexican citizen with legal residency. Never mind that his real name is Ivan Volkov, and he is a wanted war criminal in Russia for crimes committed during the Soviet era. So you let him operate. We do not let him do anything. We just do not have the authority to stop him. But you are not operating under any authority, are you? You are a civilian, a plumber. If you happen to cross paths with Volkov and something unfortunate happens, well, that is just bad luck. Sarah met his eyes. That is why I am here. Not to stop you, to help you, because sometimes the system fails and old warriors have to step up one more time. Frank met her gaze, saw the truth there. She meant it. You want me to kill him? I want you to get your son back. What happens to Volkov in the process is between you and him. Sarah turned on the tablet, pulled up a file marked classified. This is everything we have on the warehouse. Floor plans from the city planning office, satellite imagery, thermal scans from last night showing heat signatures on all 3 floors. She swiped through images. Frank studied them carefully. The warehouse was larger than it looked from the outside. 3 floors, multiple rooms, 2 staircases, 1 elevator shaft, currently non-functional according to the building inspection records from 2019. Where are they keeping the hostages? Frank asked. 3rd floor, northwest corner room. We picked up 4 heat signatures in that location 6 hours ago. Stationary, probably restrained. Sarah zoomed in on the thermal image. 4 glowing shapes in a small space, human-shaped. Your son and his team. Frank memorized the layout. 3rd floor, northwest corner, approximately 40 meters from the main staircase. Guarded by how many men he could only guess. What about Volkov? 2nd floor, center of the building. What used to be the foreman's office. He has set up a command center there. Computers, communications equipment. He runs his entire operation from that room. How many men total? Sarah pulled up another file. Best estimate, 120. Rotating shifts, 80 on duty at any given time. 40 resting. They have barracks on the first floor, professional security, former military, Mexican special forces, mostly. Volkov pays well, $3,000 a month per man. That is a fortune in Mexico. Frank did the math. 80 armed men, one 72-year-old with a submachine gun and bad knees. The numbers did not add up to survival. They barely added up to getting through the front door. There is something else you need to know, Sarah said. Her voice dropped lower, more serious. We have been monitoring radio chatter from inside the warehouse. One of the SEALs has been communicating with Volkov's people. Frank went very still. What do you mean? We intercepted encrypted transmissions yesterday morning. Before the capture, one of your son's team was sending GPS coordinates back to the warehouse. Location updates, patrol routes. Like he wanted them to know exactly where the SEAL team would be and when. You are saying one of them is working for Volkov. I am saying the evidence points that way. We do not know which one, but someone set up that ambush from the inside. Someone betrayed the team. Frank's mind raced. Michael trusted his team absolutely. They had trained together, fought together. Brotherhood ran deep in the SEAL community. The idea that one of them could be a traitor was worse than any ambush, worse than any torture. Who? Frank asked. We do not know. The transmissions were encrypted with military-grade security. We only picked them up because we were already monitoring Volkov's frequencies for the drug trafficking investigation. Could be any of the four. Not Michael. Are you sure? When was the last time you really talked to your son? Not about weather or work, about real things, about who he is now, about what pressures he might be under, what debts he might owe. Frank said nothing. Sarah was right, and they both knew it. He had not really talked to Michael in 20 years, had no idea what debts the boy might have, what pressures, what compromises. Hell, he barely knew what Michael did for fun. I do not believe it, Frank said finally. Not Michael. Then one of the others, Chief Petty Officer Carlos Rodriguez, Petty Officer First Class Devin Harris, Petty Officer Second Class Tommy Nguyen. One of them betrayed the team, and you need to figure out which one before you get yourself killed trying to save them all. Sarah pushed the tablet across the table. Take this. Everything we have is on there. Building plans, guard rotations, radio frequencies. There is also something else, a piece of intel that came through channels this morning. She pulled up a medical file. Frank read the header. Ivan Volkov, patient number classified. Diagnosis, adenocarcinoma of the pancreas. Stage 4, prognosis, 3 to 4 months. He really is dying, Frank said. Pancreatic cancer, caught too late for surgery. He is on palliative care, pain management. That is why he is doing this now. Legacy, revenge, whatever you want to call it. He wants to settle scores before the cancer finishes what war never could. Frank stared at the file, at the medical scans showing a tumor wrapped around vital organs like a fist. Volkov had maybe 12 weeks left. 12 weeks to inflict as much damage as possible before the darkness took him. There is one more thing, Sarah said. Volkov is not just running a drug operation. He has been moving something else through his pipeline, something that has the CIA very nervous. She pulled up another classified file. Frank read quickly. Words jumped out. Enriched uranium, Pakistani black market, dirty bomb components, shipments traced from Karachi to Sinaloa to Tijuana. Jesus Christ, Frank muttered. 20 kilograms of enriched uranium, enough to build a radiological dispersal device that could contaminate downtown San Diego for decades, make it uninhabitable. We think he already moved it north. Could be anywhere in California by now. Hidden in a storage unit, a warehouse, someone's garage. We have been tearing the city apart looking for it. Why are you telling me this? Because if you kill Volkov, that information might die with him. We need him alive. We need him to tell us where the uranium is before some terrorist group buys it and turns San Diego into a ghost town. Frank pushed back from the table. I am not here to save cities. I am here to save my son. I know, but maybe you can do both. Get your son out. Keep Volkov alive long enough to interrogate him. Then do whatever you want. And if I cannot, if it comes down to Michael or Volkov, Sarah met his eyes, then you choose your son every time. No hesitation. That is what fathers do. Frank stood, picked up the tablet. Thank you for this. Callahan, one more thing. There are dirty elements in DEA protecting Volkov. Assistant Director Mark Crowley specifically. He has been running an interference on raids for 5 years, taking bribes, blocking warrants. If this goes sideways, do not expect help from official channels. You are on your own. Story of my life. Frank walked out of the Starbucks into morning sunlight that hurt his eyes. The street was crowded now. Tourists taking photos, vendors shouting prices in Spanish and broken English. Life happening all around him while he carried death in a duffel bag. He found a quiet alley 3 blocks away, sat down behind a dumpster that smelled like rotting fish and worse things. Opened the tablet and studied the files Sarah had given him. Building plans, guard rotations, radio frequencies, thermal imagery. 3rd floor, northwest corner. His son was up there, alive. For now. Frank checked his watch, 7:15 in the morning, 7 hours and 45 minutes until the deadline. He needed a plan, something better than walking through the front door and hoping his reflexes from 50 years ago were still sharp enough to keep him alive. His phone buzzed, another message, this one from Volkov's number. Frank, I know you are out there. I can feel you watching, like old times. Do you remember East Berlin? The cell we shared, you in chains, me with all the time in the world. I broke better men than you, but you were special, stubborn, proud, American arrogance wrapped in steel trident. I wanted to break you so badly, and you denied me, escaped before I could finish the job. That has haunted me for 54 years. Now we get to finish it. Come to the warehouse at 2 o'clock. Front door, hands on your head. Or I start with the fingernails. Your son has lovely hands. Would be ashamed to ruin them. Frank read the message 3 times. Felt the old rage building in his chest. The same rage that had kept him alive in that interrogation cell when every part of him wanted to die. Volkov wanted him angry, wanted him reckless, wanted him to make mistakes. Frank would not give him the satisfaction. He opened the building plans on the tablet, studied the warehouse layout, 3 stories. The main entrance faced the street, too exposed, too obvious. The loading dock on the east side offered better access but would be heavily guarded. The west side had no entrances at all, just solid concrete wall. But the roof had ventilation access, old school HVAC vents, and a skylight that probably had not been cleaned in 20 years. Frank zoomed in on the architectural drawings. The skylight sat directly above the 2nd floor, above Volkov's command center. A plan began to form, not a good plan, but better than nothing. Frank needed equipment he did not have. Rope, climbing gear, something to cut through the skylight glass without making noise. He thought about Gunny back in San Diego, the old Marine who had supplied him with weapons. But Tijuana was enemy territory, no friendly contacts, no supply lines. Unless Frank pulled out his phone, scrolled through contacts he had not called in decades, found a name that made him pause. Eduardo Silva, former CIA asset, ran a network of informants in Baja California during the 1980s when the agency was tracking Soviet advisors in Central America. Last Frank heard, Silva had retired and opened a hardware store in Rosarito Beach. He dialed the number. It rang 6 times before a man answered. Old voice, suspicious. ¿Quién es? Eduardo, this is Frank Callahan. We worked together a long time ago, during the Cold War operations in Central America. Silence, then, Callahan? Dios mío, I thought you were dead. I get that a lot. Why are you calling me after all these years? I need help. I am in Tijuana. I need equipment. Hardware. The kind you do not buy at Home Depot. Another pause. You are in trouble. Yes, bad trouble. The worst. Eduardo exhaled slowly. I am an old man now, Frank. 70 years old. I sell paint and hammers. I do not do that other work anymore. I'm not asking you to do anything except point me in the right direction. I need rope, climbing equipment, something to cut glass. I can pay. This is about Volkov, yes? I hear things. I hear 4 Americans were taken. I hear one of them is your son. Frank said nothing. You are going to get yourself killed, my friend. Probably, but I have to try. Eduardo was quiet for a long moment. There is a marine supply store on Calle Tercera. Ask for Manuel. Tell him Eduardo sent you. He will have what you need. But Frank, listen to me. Volkov has protection. Police, military, government. You cannot touch him without consequences. I will deal with the consequences later. There may not be a later. Then I will die trying. Eduardo gave him the address. Frank memorized it, thanked the old man, ended the call. The marine supply store was 30 minutes away on foot. Frank moved through Tijuana, Just another gringo tourist in the wrong part of town. Nobody looked at him twice. He was invisible. Exactly how he wanted it. The store sat between a tire shop and a restaurant that advertised the best tacos in Baja. Frank entered, narrow aisles packed with fishing gear and boat equipment. A man behind the counter looked up, 60 years old, scarred hands, eyes that had seen the dark side of life. Help you? Eduardo sent me. I need climbing rope. Carabiners, glass cutter. He said you could help. Manuel studied Frank carefully. You are the American. Yes. The one going after Volkov. Yes. Manuel walked to the back of the store, returned with a coil of rope and a bag of climbing equipment. Set it on the counter. $200, American. Frank paid with cash. Manuel took the money without counting it. One more thing, Frank said. I need information. The warehouse where Volkov operates. How many guards during shift change? When do they rotate? Manuel's expression did not change. Why would I know that? Because everyone knows. In a town like this, nothing happens without the neighbors seeing. You sell equipment to fishermen. Fishermen see everything. Manuel considered this. Shift changes at 1400 hours, 2 in the afternoon, 10 minutes when the old guards are leaving and new guards are arriving, 10 minutes when they are distracted, counting money, smoking cigarettes, not watching. Thank you. Do not thank me. If you fail, Volkov will know who helped you. I have a family. He will kill them to make a point. Then I will not fail. Frank left the store with the rope coiled over his shoulder, climbed into a taxi, gave the driver an address 6 blocks from the warehouse, paid the fare and walked the rest of the way. 9:30 in the morning, 4.5 hours until Volkov's deadline, 3.5 hours until shift change. Frank returned to his observation post on the office building roof, set up his equipment, the MP5 with suppressor attached, the Glock loaded and ready, the 1911 as backup, 4 grenades, 2 pounds of C4 with detonators and a simple timer. And now climbing rope, 60 feet of braided nylon, strong enough to hold 500 pounds, carabiners, a glass cutter, everything he needed to drop through the skylight like a spider descending on a web. Frank ate a protein bar that tasted like cardboard mixed with sawdust, drank water from a bottle that was warm from sitting in his duffel, took another amphetamine pill, felt his heart rate kick up, his focus sharpen. He checked the tablet, reviewed the building plans one more time, memorized the route from skylight to third-floor hostage room, counted the doors he would need to breach, estimated the number of guards he would encounter. The math still did not add up to survival, but math was for accountants. Frank was a soldier. Soldiers dealt in will and violence in the stubborn refusal to die. His phone buzzed. Another message from Volkov. Time is running out, Frank. 3 hours and 20 minutes. Your son is asking for you, crying for his daddy, begging me not to hurt him. It is pathetic. I thought SEALs were supposed to be tough, but pain makes cowards of us all, even your boy. Frank stared at the message, felt rage building again, controlled it, channeled it. Rage was fuel. Fuel without direction was just fire consuming itself. He typed a response, 1 word. Coming! Frank put away the phone, checked his weapons one final time. The MP5 was clean. The Glock had a round in the chamber. The 1911 was ready. Everything was ready. Except him. Frank sat on the roof and looked out over Tijuana. Millions of people living their lives. Working jobs. Raising families. Trying to survive in a world that did not care whether they lived or died. And here he was, an old man about to commit suicide for a son who barely knew him. Margaret would have told him he was insane. She had told him that many times during their marriage. Usually she was right, but this time sanity was not the point. This time, the only thing that mattered was the promise every father makes to his child. I will protect you. I will keep you safe, even if it kills me. Especially if it kills me. Frank closed his eyes, let himself remember. Michael at 5 years old, learning to ride a bike on the sidewalk outside their apartment in Virginia. Falling, crying, getting back up because his father told him that was what men did. They fell and they got back up. Michael at 10, first Little League game, strike out, embarrassed, coming home angry at himself. Frank teaching him that failure was just information. Learn from it, adapt, come back stronger. Michael at 18, leaving for the Naval Academy, shaking his father's hand because they had never been the kind of family that hugged. Frank wanting to say so many things, saying nothing, watching his son drive away. Michael at 42, a SEAL, a leader, a man who had become everything Frank hoped for and nothing Frank deserved. Frank opened his eyes. The sun was directly overhead now. Noon, 2 hours until the deadline, 1.5 hours until shift change. Time to move. Frank gathered his equipment, secured the rope, checked the glass cutter, put on thin gloves to avoid leaving prints, loaded the MP5 with a fresh magazine, chambered around, safety off. He climbed down from the office building, moved through alleys, circled to the west side of the warehouse, the side with no entrances, no guards, no cameras. Found a loading crane attached to the building's exterior, old steel, rusted but solid, 30 feet tall. It would get him to the roof. Frank started climbing, hand over hand. His shoulder screamed. His knee threatened to buckle. He ignored both. Pain was information, information that you were still alive and still fighting. He reached the roof, pulled himself over the edge, lay flat on the gravel surface, breathing hard, heart pounding. 72 years old and scaling buildings. At least he was consistent. Frank crawled across the roof, stayed low, invisible to the guards below, found the skylight exactly where the building plan said it would be. 3 feet by 4 feet, covered in decades of dirt and bird shit. Through the grime, Frank could see the second floor below. The command center. Computers glowing. 2 men working. No sign of Volkov. He checked his watch. 1:15, 45 minutes to deadline, 15 minutes to shift change. Frank uncoiled the rope, tied one end to a roof support beam, tested it, 500-pound capacity. It would hold. He attached the rope to his harness with a carabiner, set up his descending rig, then pulled out the glass cutter. The cutter was diamond-tipped, professional tool, designed for clean cuts through plate glass. Frank scored the skylight in a rectangle, 3 feet by 2 feet, just large enough for a man to fit through. He worked slowly, carefully, no sound except the whisper of diamond on glass. Below him, the 2 men at the computers continued working, oblivious. Frank finished the cut, placed small suction cups on the glass panel, applied pressure. The panel separated from the frame with a soft crack. Frank caught it, held it, set it aside. Now there was just empty space and 20 feet of rope between him and the second floor. Frank attached the MP5 to a sling across his chest, made sure it would not tangle during descent. Checked the Glock. Checked the 1911, everything secure thing. He gripped the rope, said a prayer to a God he did not believe in, and stepped through the skylight into the space below. The descent took 5 seconds. Frank dropped silently. Boots touched the floor without sound. He released the rope, raised the MP5, acquired both targets. The 2 men at the computers turned, eyes wide, mouths opening to shout. Frank fired. 2 3-round bursts, suppressed. The sound was no louder than someone coughing. Both men dropped, dead before they understood what happened. Frank scanned the room. Command center, exactly as Sarah had described. Computers, radio equipment, maps on the wall showing trafficking routes, and a door leading to the rest of the second floor. He moved to the door, listened. Footsteps outside, guards patrolling. How many he could not tell. Frank checked his watch, 1:27, 33 minutes to deadline, 8 minutes to shift change. His phone buzzed. He pulled it out. One last message from Volkov. I see you, Frank. I see what you did. Very impressive, very SEAL. But you are too late. Time is up. I am starting with your son's right hand, index finger. You will hear him scream. From somewhere above him, Frank heard it. A scream. Young, male, full of agony. Michael. Frank forgot about shift change, forgot about tactics, forgot about everything except that sound. He kicked open the door and entered the war. The hallway exploded with violence. Frank came through the door, low and fast, MP5 raised, his body moving on instincts that were 50 years old but never forgotten. 3 guards turned toward the sound. 3 men with automatic rifles and surprise written on their faces. They were fast. Frank was faster. The MP5 coughed 3 times. Suppressed rounds punched through flesh and bone. The first guard dropped with holes in his chest. The second spun sideways as bullets tore through his neck. The third managed to raise his rifle before Frank put 2 rounds through his forehead. 3 men dead in under 2 seconds. Frank kept moving, never stopped moving. Movement is life. Stillness is death. The lessons drilled into him at Fort Bragg in 1970 were still true in 2024. The second-floor hallway stretched 30 feet ahead, doors on both sides, fluorescent lights flickering overhead, the smell of cordite and copper. Behind him, the command center with two dead men. Ahead somewhere, his son's screams had gone silent. That silence terrified Frank more than any sound. He moved along the wall, weapon up, checking corners. His knee protested every step. His back felt like someone had driven railroad spikes through it. The amphetamine kept him alert but could not stop the body from demanding rest it would not get. 72 years old, back in the field one more time. A door opened to his left. Frank spun. A guard emerged, coffee in hand, expression casual. The expression changed to shock when he saw Frank. The coffee cup fell. The guard reached for his weapon. Frank shot him twice in the chest. The man fell backward into the room he had come from. Frank stepped over the body and kept moving. Gunfire erupted from the stairwell at the end of the hall. Bullets chewed through drywall 6 inches from Frank's head. He dropped to one knee. Turned fire. The MP5 spit rounds in controlled bursts. Someone screamed. Someone fell. The gunfire stopped. Frank reloaded. His hands moved automatically. Dropped the empty mag, slamming a fresh one. Racked the charging handle. Ready? The entire sequence took 2 seconds. He heard boots thundering on stairs, men shouting in Spanish, orders being given. The whole warehouse was awake now. 80 guards, maybe more, all of them converging on this hallway. On him. Frank pulled a fragmentation grenade from his vest, pulled the pin, counted 1001, 1002, threw it toward the stairwell. The grenade bounced once, twice, disappeared around the corner. The explosion was massive, confined space, concrete walls. The blast wave rolled down the hallway like a physical thing. Frank felt it hit his chest, felt his ears ring. Smoke and dust billowed from the stairwell. Through it, he heard screaming. Men dying, men burning, the sounds that filled his nightmares. Frank moved through the smoke, reached the stairwell, bodies everywhere, 6 men, maybe 7. Hard to count when they were scattered in pieces. The stairs leading down were blocked with debris. The stairs leading up were clear. 3rd floor, northwest corner, where they were holding Michael and the other SEALs. Frank climbed. Each step sent lightning through his knee. He gritted his teeth, kept climbing. Information. That was all pain was. Information that you were still breathing and still fighting. The 3rd floor hallway was darker than the 2nd. Emergency lights only. Red glow, shadows everywhere. Frank moved through them with the patience of a hunter. Just another shadow among shadows. A guard appeared at the far end of the hall. Young, maybe 25. He saw Frank and froze. Indecision on his face. Training said shoot. Survival instinct said run. He chose wrong. He raised his rifle. Frank shot him in the throat. The guard dropped, choking on his own blood. Frank stepped over him without looking down. No time for mercy, no time for regret, just forward motion and violence. The northwest corner room sat behind a steel door with a keypad lock. Frank could hear voices inside, calm voices. Professional. Someone giving orders in Russian accented English. Bring me the pliers. Medical grade, I want clean cuts. Volkov. Frank pulled C4 from his vest, rolled it into a thin strip, pressed it against the door hinges, top and bottom. Inserted detonators. Set the timer for 5 seconds. Stepped back around the corner. The explosion blew the door off its hinges. The steel panel flew inward like it had been kicked by God. Frank came through the smoke before it cleared. MP5 up, finger on trigger, ready to kill everything that moved. The room was 20 feet square. Concrete floor, bare walls. In the center, 4 men sat chained to chairs. Beaten, bloodied, but alive. Frank's eyes found Michael immediately. His son's face was swollen. Blood ran from his nose. But his eyes were clear, alert, defiant. Around the prisoners stood 8 guards. Professional security, body armor, automatic weapons. They turned toward the explosion, toward Frank, 8 rifles coming up to fire. Frank threw himself sideways, hit the floor hard, rolled. The MP5 spoke in his hands. 3 round bursts, controlled, precise. The first guard took rounds in the face, the second in the chest. The third started to turn and died with bullets through his ribs. Return fire chewed up the floor where Frank had been. He rolled again, came up on one knee behind a steel support column. Bullets sparked off metal. Frank leaned out, fired. Fourth guard down, fifth guard wounded, sixth guard retreating toward a back door. Frank stood, charged forward, closed the distance. The wounded guard tried to raise his weapon. Frank kicked it away, put 2 rounds in the man's chest, turned toward the sixth guard. The man was at the door, hand on the handle. Frank aimed, fired. The bullet caught him in the spine. He dropped like his strings had been cut. Seventh guard came from Frank's blind side, tackled him. Both men went down. The MP5 clattered away. Frank hit the concrete hard enough to crack ribs. Air exploded from his lungs. The guard was younger, stronger. He got on top, hands around Frank's throat, squeezing. Frank could not breathe. His vision tunneled. Red spots danced at the edges. The guard's face was inches away. Young face, scared face, doing his job, following orders. None of that mattered. Frank's hand found the Ka bar knife on his belt, pulled it, drove it up and under the guard's ribs, felt it punch through diaphragm and into heart. The guard's eyes went wide. His grip loosened. Frank twisted the blade, pushed the body off. The eighth guard had used the distraction to run. Frank heard boots retreating down the hallway. Let him go. 8 down was enough for now. Frank stood. His ribs screamed. His throat felt crushed. He could taste blood in his mouth. Probably bit his tongue during the fall. He retrieved the MP5. Checked it. Still functional. Good German engineering. Dad? Michael's voice, hoarse, strained, but unmistakably his son. Frank turned, looked at the 4 men chained to chairs, Michael in the center. To his left, a Hispanic man in his mid-30s, Chief Petty Officer Carlos Rodriguez. To Michael's right, a black man about 30, Petty Officer First Class Devin Harris. Next to Harris, a younger man, Asian features, Tommy Nguyen. All 4 watching Frank with expressions that mixed relief and disbelief. Who the hell are you? Rodriguez asked. Michael answered before Frank could. That's my father. Your father is a plumber. My father is a lot of things. Frank moved to Michael first, pulled out the Ka bar, cut through the zip ties binding his son's wrists. Michael's hands came free. The right one was damaged. Index finger bent at an unnatural angle. Dislocated or broken. Volkov had been true to his word. Can you move? Frank asked. Yeah, hurts like hell, but I can move. Frank cut the other seals free. Rodriguez rubbed his wrists. Harris tried to stand and collapsed. His leg was wounded. Bullet had gone through the calf muscle, not fatal but crippling. I need a weapon, Rodriguez said. Frank handed him the Glock from his thigh holster. Rodriguez checked it, nodded approval. There are more outside, Frank said. 70 guards, maybe 80. We need to move fast. Where's Volkov? Michael asked. I do not know. He was here, now he is not. We should find him. End this. We should get you out. That is the mission. The mission? Michael's voice rose. Dad, this psychopath tortured me. Broke my finger. Threatened to kill my team. I'm not leaving until he is dead. Frank met his son's eyes. Saw the anger there. The pride. The stubborn refusal to back down that Frank recognized because he saw it every morning in the mirror. Your finger needs medical attention. Harris needs medical attention. We are outnumbered 80-5. We need to extract now while we have the chance. You came here to save us. I appreciate that, but I am not running. Michael, I am not asking. And I am not obeying. I am not your subordinate. I am a SEAL team commander. This is my operation now. Father and son stared at each other. Neither willing to blink. Neither willing to back down. Behind them, Rodriguez and Nguyen watched the confrontation with fascination. Harris groaned on the floor. The moment was broken by a voice over the building's loudspeaker system. Russian accent, amused, malicious. Frank, Michael. Such a touching reunion. Father and son together again. It brings tears to my eyes, but I am afraid your escape attempt has failed. I have 70 men surrounding that room. You have 1 MP5 and a pistol. The math does not work in your favor. Frank looked around the room. No windows. 1 door. The door he had blown off its hinges. The doorway now filled with the shadows of men taking positions outside. I will make you an offer, Volkov continued. Send out the 4 SEALs, unharmed. I will let them walk out of here. But you stay, Frank. You and I finish what we started. One old man against another. Fair fight. Winner lives, loser dies. What do you say? Michael grabbed Frank's arm. Do not do it. It is a trap. Of course it is a trap, Frank said. Everything Volkov does is a trap. But he is right about the math. We cannot fight our way through 70 men. Not with Harris wounded, not with your finger broken. We can try. And you will die trying, all of you. Is that what you want? Michael had no answer. Frank turned toward the door, raised his voice. Volkov, I accept your terms. The SEALs walk out. I stay. We settle this between us. No, Michael said. Dad, no. This is not your choice. He will kill you. Probably, but you will be alive. That is all that matters. Rodriguez stepped forward, put a hand on Michael's shoulder. Lieutenant, we need to go. Your father is giving us a chance. We should take it. Michael shook off the hand. I am not leaving him. You are. Frank's voice went hard. Command voice. The voice that had led men through jungles and across deserts. That is an order. You are not my commanding officer. I am your father, and you will obey me once, this once. The loudspeaker crackled again. Time is running short, Frank. Do we have an agreement, or do I send my men in? They will not be gentle with the young ones. Frank looked at his son, really looked at him. Saw the boy who had learned to ride a bike, the teenager who had struck out at baseball, the young man who had shaken his father's hand and driven away to the Naval Academy. Saw all of it compressed into this moment, this choice. Go, Frank said quietly. Take your men and go. Get Harris medical attention. Get your finger fixed. Live your life. That is all I ever wanted for you. I can't leave you here. You can. You will. Frank pressed the MP5 into Michael's hands. Take this. There is a stairwell at the east end. It leads to the loading dock. Sarah Hendricks is waiting across the border. DA liaison. She will get you home. Who is Sarah Hendricks? Someone I saved a long time ago. Now she saves you. Funny how that works. Michael's eyes were wet. Frank had not seen his son cry since he was 10 years old. Dad, I am sorry for everything, for the distance, for not knowing you, for being ashamed of you. You have nothing to be sorry for. I was the one who left. I was the one who chose to disappear. You just lived your life the best way you knew how. That is all anyone can do. Frank pulled his son into an embrace. Brief, awkward. Neither of them knew how to do this, but Michael held on like he was drowning, and Frank was the only solid thing in the world. I love you, son. I love you too, Dad. Frank let go, stepped back. Now get the hell out of here before I change my mind. Michael wiped his eyes, nodded to Rodriguez and Nguyen. They lifted Harris between them, started moving toward the door. Frank called out, Volkov, the SEALs are coming out. If your men shoot, the deal is off and I blow this building to hell. I still have C4 and a very bad temper. No one will shoot, Volkov replied. I am a man of my word. The 4 SEALs moved through the doorway, into the hallway. Frank watched them go. Rodriguez supporting Harris on one side, Nguyen on the other, Michael bringing up the rear with the MP5 raised. They disappeared into the shadows. Frank stood alone in the room, surrounded by dead guards, covered in their blood and his own. His ribs were cracked. His knee was ready to collapse. His body was 72 years old and felt like 90, but his mind was sharp, clear, focused. He pulled the last grenade from his vest, held it in his hand, felt the weight of it. 2 pounds of high explosive and shrapnel, enough to kill everyone in this room and the hallway beyond. Volkov, Frank called out. Show yourself. Face me like a man. The loudspeaker crackled. Oh, Frank, always so dramatic, always so American. You think this is a movie? You think there will be some grand confrontation? Some final showdown? I think you are a coward who hides behind loudspeakers and young men with guns. Perhaps, but this coward has survived 50 years in a business that kills most men in 5. Caution is not cowardice, it is wisdom. Then be wise. Come down here. Finish what you started in East Berlin. Or do you only torture men when they are chained? Silence. Then footsteps. Slow, measured. Coming from the hallway, a figure appeared in the doorway. Tall, thin, white hair, gaunt face with yellow-tinged skin. Ivan Volkov at 78 years old, cancer eating him from the inside. But still imposing, still dangerous. He was unarmed, both hands visible, empty. Behind him stood a dozen guards with rifles pointed at Frank. "Here I am," Volkov said. His voice was weaker in person than over the loudspeaker. Raspy. Each word seemed to cost him effort. "The monster from your nightmares. Still alive. Still breathing. Still winning. You look like death." "I am death, just taking my time arriving." Volkov stepped into the room, looked around at the bodies. "You killed 18 of my men. Impressive. For an old man with bad knees and worse judgment. Your men were careless. They were young. Youth is always careless. It thinks itself immortal." Volkov smiled. "We know better, do we not, Frank? We know exactly how mortal we are. We have seen it, touched it, smelled it. Death is an old friend to men like us. Death is all you have left. True, the cancer gives me perhaps 8 weeks. 10 if I am unlucky. Every day I wake up in agony. Every day I wonder if this is the last. It is exhausting, Frank. Dying is very hard work. Then why not just let it take you? Why this? Why my son?" Volkov's smile faded. "Because you took everything from me. My career, my country, my life. You escaped that cell in East Berlin before I could break you. Do you know how that haunted me? For 54 years I have thought about it. The one prisoner who got away. The one American who denied me my victory. So this is revenge. This is justice, my justice, the only kind left to dying men." Frank's hand tightened on the grenade. "Your men, the ones behind you. If I pull this pin, we all die. You, me, them, everyone in this hallway. You will not." "Why not?" "Because you are a hero, Frank. Heroes do not murder 12 young men just to kill one old enemy. Heroes sacrifice themselves, they save others. It is what makes you weak." "And what does that make you?" "A survivor. I do what needs to be done. I compromise. I adapt. That is why I am still here and better men than you are dead." Frank met Volkov's eyes. Saw the truth there. The old KGB officer was not bluffing. He knew Frank would not pull the pin. Knew it with absolute certainty. Because men like Frank had rules. Lines they would not cross. And men like Volkov used those rules as weapons. "The uranium," Frank said. 20 kilograms of enriched uranium. Where is it?" Volkov laughed. The sound turned into a coughing fit. He bent over. Hacked. Spit blood on the floor. "Ah, yes. Your DEA friend told you about that, I assume. Sarah Hendricks. Good agent, persistent, annoying. Where is it?" "Somewhere in California. Hidden. Safe. Waiting for the right buyer." Volkov straightened up. "But I will never tell you where. That secret dies with me. Think about it, Frank. 20 kilograms. Enough to contaminate San Diego for decades. Make it uninhabitable. Turn a city of millions into a ghost town. All because you could not extract the information from me. I do not negotiate with terrorists. Then thousands will die. Tens of thousands. Their blood on your hands. Because of your principles. Your rules." Volkov stepped closer. Close enough that Frank could smell the sickness on him. "I win either way. If you kill me, the uranium stays hidden. If you let me live, I sell it to the highest bidder. Either way, America suffers. Either way, you lose." Frank's mind raced. Volkov was right. Every option led to disaster. Kill him and the uranium stayed hidden until someone found it by accident. Let him live and he sold it to terrorists. There was no good choice. Only degrees of catastrophe. "But I will make you one final offer," Volkov said. "Trade. You for the information. You stay here. Become my guest. I torture you, break you, the way I should have done 54 years ago. And when I am satisfied, when you have screamed enough, I tell your people where the uranium is hidden. Your suffering buys thousands of lives. Very heroic, very American. And you expect me to believe you will keep that promise? No, but you hope I will. And hope is all you have left." Frank looked at the grenade in his hand, looked at Volkov, looked at the guards behind him. Young men with rifles and families waiting at home. Men who were just doing a job, following orders, not so different from Frank at their age. He thought about Michael, safe now, crossing the border, getting medical attention, living to fight another day. That was enough. That had to be enough. Frank set the grenade on the floor. Carefully, pin still in place. He raised his hands above his head. "No tricks," he said. "No games. You get what you want. I get the uranium location. Then you let me die quickly. No torture. No breaking. Just a bullet. That is my condition." Volkov studied him. "You do not trust me to keep my word." I do not, but I am out of options. Honesty, I appreciate that. Volkov gestured to his guards. Take him. Chain him. We have much to discuss. The guards moved forward. Weapons pointed at Frank's head. Hands grabbed his arms, pulled them behind his back. Zip ties cut into his wrists. Someone kicked his knee. He dropped to the concrete. Pain exploded through his leg. Volkov knelt down, brought his face close to Frank's. I am going to enjoy this. Every moment. Every scream. 54 years I have waited, now we have all the time in the world. You have 8 weeks. More than enough. A guard hit Frank in the back of the head with a rifle butt. Light exploded behind his eyes, the world tilted. He tasted blood, felt hands dragging him, felt his body moving though he could not control it. Somewhere in the distance, Michael was safe. That thought kept Frank conscious, kept him from giving in to the darkness that called his name. They dragged him downstairs, along hallways, through doors, into a basement Frank had not known existed. The floor was concrete, the walls were stone, old, maybe 100 years old, from when this building had been a factory instead of a cartel stronghold. They chained him to a chair, heavy chains, the kind used for cargo, his wrists, his ankles, his chest. He could not move, could barely breathe. Volkov stood in front of him. Behind Volkov, a table. On the table, tools, medical instruments, pliers, scalpels, a blowtorch, everything needed to take a man apart piece by piece. Let us begin, Volkov said. And somewhere above them, in the streets of Tijuana, Michael Callahan stopped running, turned around, looked at Rodriguez and Harrison Nguyen. We are going back. Lieutenant, your father said, I do not care what he said. He is my father. I am not leaving him to die alone. Rodriguez nodded slowly. What is the plan? We find a way in, we get him out, and we kill everyone who tries to stop us. That is a terrible plan. You have a better one? No. Then it is the only plan. The 4 SEALs turned back toward the warehouse, limping, bleeding, broken, but still moving, still fighting. Because that was what SEALs did. They did not leave men behind, not even when those men ordered them to. And in the basement, Frank Callahan prepared for what came next. But he also smiled because his son was safe, and nothing else mattered. Not torture, not death, not even the uranium that could kill thousands. His son was safe, and Frank could face whatever came knowing he had done one thing right in his long and bloody life. He had saved his boy. The first thing Frank noticed was the cold, basement cold, the kind that seeped into your bones and made you forget what warmth felt like. The second thing was the smell, old stone and rust, and something organic that had died down here a long time ago. The third thing was Volkov's face, 6 inches away, smiling. Welcome back, Frank. You drifted away for a moment. Head trauma will do that, but we need you awake for this. Pain requires consciousness. Frank tested his restraints. Heavy chains, industrial grade. His wrists were bound behind the chair, his ankles chained to the chair legs, his chest wrapped with chain and padlocked. He could move his head, nothing else. 54 years, Volkov said. He walked to the table, picked up a pair of medical pliers, examined them like a jeweler examining diamonds. 54 years I have wondered what it would feel like to finish what we started, to hear you scream the way you denied me in East Berlin. You were always better at talking than doing, Frank said. His voice came out wrong, damaged. The guard who hit him had done something to his throat. Volkov laughed. Still defiant, still proud. I remember this about you. The American arrogance that cannot be broken because it cannot imagine being broken. He set down the pliers, picked up a small blowtorch instead. Let me ask you something, Frank. In East Berlin, when I had you in that cell for 10 months, what kept you going? What prevented you from giving up? Knowing that men like you eventually lose, you always lose because you are empty. You have nothing inside except hunger for power and fear of death. Poetic. Wrong, but poetic. Volkov clicked the blowtorch. A blue flame appeared. I survived because I adapted. Because I understood that principles are luxuries and survival is the only morality that matters. You are chained to a chair in a basement in Mexico because you chose principles. I am standing here holding fire because I chose survival. Who won? Ask me in an hour. The basement door exploded inward. Not opened. Exploded. The steel door flew off its hinges with a blast that shook dust from the ceiling. Through the smoke came four shapes, moving fast, weapons up. Michael led the charge, MP5 raised, finger on trigger. Behind him, Rodriguez with the Glock. Gwen supporting Harris, who was limping badly but still mobile. All four with the hard eyes of men who had decided dying was acceptable if it meant not living as cowards. "Get away from my father," Michael said. Volkov spun, grabbed Frank by the hair, pressed the blowtorch against Frank's shoulder. Frank felt his shirt ignite, felt skin burn, bit down hard to keep from screaming, would not give Volkov the satisfaction. "Stop or I burn him alive," Volkov said. Michael did not stop, kept advancing. "You burn him, you die next. Put down the torch." "This is not how this works. I hold all the cards. I have your father. I have 70 men in this building. You have 4 broken seals and 1 magazine of ammunition. Then I guess we are all dying today." Something in Michael's voice made Volkov hesitate. The absolute certainty. The willingness to trade everything for this moment. It was a tone Volkov recognized. He had heard it before. In East Berlin, from the man chained to the chair. "You are your father's son," Volkov said quietly. "Damn right I am." A window exploded. Glass showered the room. A smoking canister rolled across the floor. Flash bang. Frank closed his eyes. The world went white. Sound disappeared into a high-pitched whine. When his vision cleared, the room was full of people, not Volkov's guards, American operators, DEA tactical vests. Sarah Hendricks stood in the doorway with an M4 rifle and 6 agents behind her. "Nobody move," Sarah said. "This facility is under the jurisdiction of the United States Drug Enforcement Administration. Everyone on the ground, now." Volkov's guards hesitated. 12 men with rifles, facing 9 Americans. The math was still in Volkov's favor. But Sarah had something they did not: authority and the willingness to start an international incident. "Your men have 2 choices," Sarah said to Volkov. "They can put down their weapons and walk out of here, or they can die in this basement and their families will never know what happened to them. You have 5 seconds to decide." Volkov looked at his guards, looked at Sarah, looked at Frank. "Stand down," he said finally. "Let them take me. This was always going to end this way." The guards lowered their weapons. Sarah's team moved in quickly, secured the guards, flex cuffed them, moved them to the corner under watch. Michael ran to Frank, pulled out a knife, started cutting the chains. Dad, can you hear me?" "I can hear you. We need to get you out of here." "The burn, 2nd degree, not fatal. Get me out of these chains." The chains fell away. Frank tried to stand. His legs would not cooperate. Michael caught him, held him up. I got you. Sarah approached. "We need to move. Mexican federal police are 10 minutes out. If they catch us here, this becomes an international incident." "What about Volkov?" Michael asked. Sarah looked at the old Russian. He stood against the wall, unarmed, unresisting, yellow skin, sunken eyes, a dead man who just had not stopped breathing yet. "We take him. He has information about the uranium. We need him alive." "No," Volkov said. "You do not understand. There is no uranium." Everyone stopped, looked at him. "What do you mean there is no uranium?" Sarah asked. Volkov smiled, blood on his teeth. "I made it up. The whole thing, intelligence reports, shipping manifests, radio chatter, all fabricated. There was never any enriched uranium. It was a story, a ghost, something to make America afraid." Frank stared at him. "Why?" "Because fear is power. Because making you waste resources chasing shadows is a victory. Because even dying, I could still hurt you." Volkov coughed, spit blood. "That is my legacy. Not conquest, not empire. Just fear and lies and Americans running in circles." Sarah's face went white. "You son of a bitch. We mobilized hundreds of agents, spent millions of dollars, tore apart half of San Diego." "I know, it was beautiful. The transmissions we intercepted, the shipping records from Pakistan, all forgeries. I had 3 years and nothing but time. I built a very convincing lie." Volkov looked at Frank. "But the mole is real. One of these SEALs has been working for me, feeding me information, setting up the ambush. Would you like to know which one?" Michael turned, looked at his team. Rodriguez, Harris, Gwen, all 3 looking back at him. "No, I do not believe it." "Chief Rodriguez," Volkov said. 3 years on my payroll. Gambling debts in Vegas, online poker, $200,000 in the hole. I offered to clear his debt and pay him $2 million to retire. All he had to do was give me your locations, your patrol routes, your mission schedules. Everyone looked at Rodriguez. The chief stood very still, expression neutral. That is bullshit. Is it? Check his bank account. Deposits every month. Small amounts. Careful. But there. Chief, Michael said slowly, tell me he is lying. Rodriguez said nothing. Chief, tell me. I am sorry, Lieutenant. I am sorry, but you do not understand. You do not know what it is like. The debt, the collectors, they were going to kill my family, my wife, my daughters. I had no choice. You had every choice, Michael said. You could have come to me. We could have figured it out. Instead, you betrayed us. You set up an ambush that got us captured, that got my father tortured. I was going to get you out. That was the plan. Volkov promised he would let you go once I delivered your father. Everyone would be fine. You believed him? I had to believe him. I had no other option. Sarah moved. Fast, weapon coming up. Rodriguez, on the ground, now. Rodriguez did not move. His hand was already on the Glock. Frank's Glock, the one Frank had given him. Rodriguez pulled it, pointed it at Sarah. I am not going to prison. I am not losing everything. Put down the weapon, Sarah said. I cannot go back. $2 million. That was the promise. 2 million and a new life. I did everything he asked. I deserve that money. Volkov laughed. Wet. Painful. There is no money, you fool. I spent it all on morphine and bribes to stay alive long enough to finish this. You were a tool, a disposable asset. Did you really think I would pay you millions? Rodriguez's face changed. Realization, horror, rage. You promised. I lied. That is what men like me do. We lie and use people, and when we are done, we discard them. Rodriguez turned the Glock toward Volkov. Then you die first. Harris moved, still wounded, still bleeding, but still a SEAL. He threw himself at Rodriguez, knocked the gun aside. Both men went down. The Glock skittered across the floor. Rodriguez was younger, stronger. He got on top, hands around Harris's throat. You should have stayed down, should have let me finish this. Wing kicked Rodriguez in the ribs. The chief grunted, lost his grip. Harris rolled away, gasping. Rodriguez stood, reached for the Glock. Michael kicked it away. Do not, Chief, please do not make this worse. Worse? It is already over. My family, my career, everything. Rodriguez pulled a knife from his boot. If I am going down, I'm taking someone with me. He charged Michael, knife raised. Frank tried to move. Could not. Still too weak, still too hurt. Sarah fired. Single shot. Center mass. Rodriguez stopped. Looked down at the hole in his chest. Looked up at Sarah. Why? Because SEALs do not betray their brothers, Sarah said. Rodriguez fell, hit the concrete. Blood pooled around him. He coughed once, twice. Tell my family. Tell them I am sorry. He stopped moving. Michael knelt beside him. Checked for a pulse. Nothing. He closed Rodriguez's eyes. I will tell them you died in combat. That is more than you deserve. But it is what your family needs to hear. Volkov applauded slowly. Bravo. Very touching. The loyal son, the honorable commander. But Rodriguez was right about one thing. He had no choice. I made sure of that. I found his weakness and exploited it. That is what war is. Finding weakness and using it. You are a monster, Michael said. No, I am a soldier. Same as you, same as your father. We just serve different causes. You served nothing except yourself. Volkov smiled. And that is why I survived 50 years while better men died. He looked at Frank. I wanted to break you, to hear you scream, to finish what we started. But this is better. Watching you watch your son learn the truth about the world. That honor is a luxury, that principles are weaknesses, that survival requires compromise. You are wrong, Frank said. His voice was barely a whisper. Damaged. My son just proved you wrong. He came back for me. He risked everything. That is not weakness. That is strength. He came back because he does not understand the cost yet. Give him time. Give him years of this life. He will learn. They always learn. Volkov coughed again, harder this time. Blood poured from his mouth. Too much blood. He looked down, surprised. Interesting. Sir, you are hemorrhaging, one of Sarah's medics said. Internal bleeding. The cancer. You need immediate medical attention. No, I do not. Volkov walked to a chair, sat down slowly. This is as good a place as any. Better than a hospital bed with machines beeping. Sarah moved toward him. We need you alive. We need to debrief you. There are other operations. Other cells. No, there are not. It was just me. One old man with a grudge and enough money to hire thugs. All of this, the warehouse, the guards, the operation, it dies with me. The uranium might have been fake, but your fentanyl operation is real. We need to know your supply chain, your distributors. Volkov shook his head. You will figure it out, or you will not. Either way, I will not be here to see it. He looked at Frank. We are the same, you and I, men out of time, relics from a different war. We should have died in East Berlin 54 years ago. Everything after that was borrowed time. We are nothing alike, Frank said. No, you killed 57 people for your country. I killed more for mine. You tortured prisoners. I tortured prisoners. You obeyed orders until you could not. I obeyed orders until I could not. The only difference is you had the luxury of walking away. I had to run, but we are both killers who survived too long. I walked away because I would not murder innocents. Captain James Wu, your cellmate, the man who tried to expose the truth about abandoned prisoners. Was he innocent? Frank went very still. How do you know about James? I know everything about you, Frank. I spent 50 years studying you. The man I could not break. I know you refused to kill him. I know the CIA killed him anyway. I know you carry that guilt like a stone around your neck. Volkov smiled. We are both killers. We both have blood on our hands. We both lie to ourselves that it was for a good cause. James was a hero. You are a murderer. There is a difference. Tell yourself that. Whatever helps you sleep. Volkov's eyes closed. His breathing became shallow. The blood flow slowed, stopped. Sarah's medic checked for a pulse. He is gone. The room went quiet. 12 men standing in a basement in Tijuana. One old Russian dead in a chair. One old SEAL barely standing. One young officer trying to process everything he had just learned. We need to move, Sarah said. Mexican police will be here any minute. We cannot explain any of this. Michael helped Frank toward the door. Can you walk? I can walk. The burn on your shoulder, you need medical attention. I have survived worse. Get your men out first. They climbed stairs. 1 floor, 2 floors. Frank's knees screamed with each step. His ribs ground against each other. His throat felt like someone had poured acid down it, but he kept moving, because stopping meant dying, and he was not ready to die yet. Outside, dawn was breaking over Tijuana, pink and gold, the city waking up to another day. Vendors setting up stalls, cars honking, life happening. Sarah had 2 vans waiting, black, unmarked. Get in, we are going to the border, unofficial crossing point, the kind that does not require paperwork. Frank climbed into the first van. Michael sat beside him. Sarah took the passenger seat. Her team piled into both vans. Engines started. They pulled away from the warehouse. Frank looked back, saw smoke rising from the building. Small fire. Electrical, probably. Or maybe one of the guards had gotten careless with a cigarette. Either way, the warehouse was burning. Volkov's empire going up in flames. Dad, Michael said, I need to ask you something. Anything. In East Berlin, when Volkov had you, for 10 months, what kept you from breaking? Frank was quiet for a long moment. I thought about your mother, about you. You were not born yet, but I knew you were coming. I had to survive to meet you, to be your father. That is what kept me alive. And then I wasted 30 years being distant from you. No, you did not waste anything. You lived your life. That is all I wanted. That is all any father wants. I should have known you better. Should have asked about your past, about who you really were. I hid from you on purpose because I did not want you to see the blood, the violence, the things I did in the dark. I wanted you to be better than me. I am not better than you. I am exactly like you. I just did not know it until today. Frank looked at his son, saw the truth in his eyes. Then be better than me in the ways that matter. Do not hide from the people you love. Do not run when things get hard. Learn from my mistakes. I will try. The vans drove north, away from the warehouse, away from the bodies, away from the basement where 2 old warriors had finally finished their war. They reached the border an hour later. Not an official crossing, a gap in the fence that Sarah's people had used before. They went through one at a time. Frank leaned on Michael. Harris leaned on Nguyen. Sarah came last, made sure everyone was across. On the American side, ambulances were waiting. Paramedics rushed forward. Frank was loaded onto a stretcher despite his protests. Michael climbed in beside him. "Sir, you need to stay outside," the paramedic said. "I'm not leaving my father." The paramedic looked at Frank. Frank nodded. "Let him stay." They rode in the ambulance together, father and son, holding hands because neither of them knew what else to do. Frank watched Michael's face, saw the exhaustion there, the trauma, the beginning of understanding what it costs to be a warrior. "It gets easier," Frank said. "Does it?" "No, but you learn to carry it better." "The nightmares, the faces, do they ever go away?" "No, but you learn to live with them. You find reasons to keep going, people to protect, things worth fighting for. Like you did. Like I tried to do. I did not always succeed, but I tried." The ambulance pulled into Naval Medical Center, San Diego. More paramedics, more doctors. They wheeled Frank inside. Michael followed, refusing to leave. In the emergency room, doctors examined Frank's burns. Second degree, painful but treatable. His ribs were cracked but not broken. His knee was swollen but functional. His throat was bruised but his vocal cords were intact. "You are lucky then." "Well, lucky," the doctor said. "Another few minutes with that blowtorch and you would have third-degree burns. Permanent damage." "I'm always lucky," Frank said. Michael stood in the corner, watching, processing. His broken finger had been set and splinted. His face had been cleaned. He looked young again, like the boy in the photograph. Before war and blood and betrayal. "Lieutenant Callahan," a nurse said, "there is someone here to see you." Sarah Hendricks entered. She looked tired, older. "Just wanted to check on you both before I disappear." "Disappear?" Michael asked. "I just led an unauthorized raid into Mexico, killed Mexican nationals, started an international incident. DEA is going to want my head, so I am leaving. Argentina, Costa Rica, somewhere with no extradition treaty and good beaches." "You saved our lives," Michael said. "Your father saved mine 37 years ago. Now we are even." Sarah looked at Frank. "Take care of yourself, old man. No more wars." "No more wars," Frank agreed. Sarah left. Frank closed his eyes, felt the morphine kicking in, felt sleep pulling at him. The first real sleep in 3 days. "Dad," Michael said. "Yes, son. Thank you for coming for me, for risking everything." That is what fathers do. Even the terrible ones, especially the terrible ones. We spend our whole lives trying to make up for the time we lost. Michael squeezed his hand. "You did not lose time. You were always there. I just did not know how to see it." Frank smiled, felt consciousness slipping away. "I love you, Michael." "I love you too, Dad." Frank drifted off to sleep. No nightmares, no screams in the dark, just peace. The kind of peace that comes from knowing you did the right thing, even if it cost you everything. The janitor's war was almost over, and he had won the only battle that mattered. The one for his son. The hospital room smelled like antiseptic and old regrets. Frank Callahan lay in a bed that was too soft, staring at a ceiling that was too white, trying to remember what peace felt like. His body was a catalog of damage. Second-degree burns across his shoulder and chest, 3 cracked ribs, a dislocated knee that had required surgery, severe dehydration, and damage to his vocal cords that the doctor said might be permanent. He might never speak above a whisper again. Small price to pay for being alive. The window showed San Diego at dawn, the city waking up, people driving to work, living their lives, completely unaware that 3 days ago, a 72-year-old plumber had crossed into Mexico and killed 47 men to save his son. The news had not reported it, would never report it. Some stories were too complicated for the truth. Michael sat in a chair beside the bed. His right hand was in a cast, index finger set and splinted. The swelling in his face had gone down, but the bruises remained, purple and yellow, the colors of healing. He had not left the hospital since they arrived, had barely slept, just sat there watching his father breathe, as if afraid Frank would stop if he looked away. "You should go home," Frank said. His voice was barely audible, damaged, like everything else about him. "I am home." Michael did not look up from the magazine he was pretending to read. Sports Illustrated. Frank doubted his son had processed a single word. "You have a life, a career. You cannot sit here forever. Watch me." Frank smiled. The expression hurt. Everything hurt, but it was a good hurt. The kind that reminded you that you survived when you should not have. A nurse entered. Young woman. Efficient. She checked Frank's vitals without making eye contact, adjusted his IV drip, left without speaking. They had been doing that for 3 days. The hospital staff knew something had happened, knew this was not a normal patient, but no one asked questions. That was the beauty of military hospitals. People understood operational security. The door opened again. Not a nurse this time. Sarah Hendricks walked in carrying 2 cups of coffee and a manila folder thick with documents. She looked tired, older than when Frank had seen her in Tijuana, the weight of what she had done sitting heavy on her shoulders. "You look terrible," she said to Frank. "You should see the other guy." "I did. In the morgue. Volkov died ugly. Cancer and bullet wounds. Not a good combination." Sarah handed 1 coffee to Michael, kept the other for herself, set the folder on Frank's bedside table. "That is your new identity. Frank Callahan is officially dead. Killed in a gas leak explosion at his trailer. Body burned beyond recognition. Dental records matched. Closed casket funeral scheduled for next week." "Who dies in my place?" Frank asked. "John Doe from the county morgue. Unclaimed. Approximately your age and build. We gave him your name, buried your past with him. You are welcome." "And who am I now?" Sarah opened the folder, pulled out a driver's license, social security card, birth certificate, all with the same name. Robert Mitchell, born 1952 in Portland, Oregon. Retired electrician, no military service, no criminal record, completely ordinary. "Robert Mitchell," Frank read. "Not very creative." It does not need to be creative. It needs to be boring, forgettable. The kind of name no one remembers 5 minutes after hearing it. "Where am I supposed to live?" "Wherever you want. You have a clean identity, a pension from your fictional electricians union, enough money to live comfortably if you are careful. The world is open to you, Frank. Or should I say Robert?" Frank studied the documents. A new life, again. The third identity he had worn in 50 years. How many times could a man reinvent himself before he forgot who he really was? "What about Sarah Hendricks?" he asked. "What happens to her?" Sarah smiled without warmth. "She is on a plane to Argentina in 6 hours. Or maybe Costa Rica. I have not decided yet. Somewhere with no extradition treaty. The DEA wants my head. Unauthorized military action on foreign soil. 6 dead Mexican nationals. International incident. I will be spending my retirement somewhere with good beaches and cheap rum. I am sorry, you should not have had to sacrifice your career. My career was sacrificing people for politics. I am glad to be done with it." She looked at Michael. "Your father saved my life in 1987. I never forgot that debt. Now it is paid. We are even." Michael finally looked up from his unread magazine. "Thank you for what you did, for bringing your team. We would not have made it without you. You would have found a way. You are your father's son." Sarah stood, finished her coffee. "I should go. I have a plane to catch. Frank or Robert or whoever you decide to be, take care of yourself. And try not to get into any more wars. You are too old for this." "That is what I keep telling myself." Sarah left. The room felt emptier without her. Frank stared at the ceiling again, counted the tiles, 27 across, 36 down, 972 tiles total. Enough to lose yourself in if you looked long enough. "Dad," Michael's voice pulled him back. "We need to talk." "About what?" "About everything. About why you disappeared from my life. Why you became someone else. Why I had to find out my father was some kind of secret operative by watching him kill 47 men. Frank sighed. This conversation had been coming for 3 days. He had hoped to avoid it longer, maybe forever. But Michael deserved answers, deserved to know the man who had raised him, or failed to raise him, depending on perspective. "It started in 1970, Frank began. I was 18 years old, the draft lottery. My number came up. I could have gone to college, could have fled to Canada, could have done a lot of things, but I believed in service, in duty. So I enlisted, Navy, became a SEAL. I know that part. You told me, 4 tours. What I did not tell you was what happened during those tours. The missions we ran, the people we killed, the things we did in the dark that never appeared in any after-action report." Frank's voice grew quieter, harder to hear. Michael leaned closer. "We were hunters. We went into enemy territory, found targets, eliminated them. Clean, efficient, no witnesses. I was good at it. Too good." "How many?" "During SEAL operations, 73 confirmed kills. But that was just the official count. The missions that had paperwork. There were others, Missions that did not exist. People who disappeared and no one ever found the bodies. Michael was silent, processing, trying to reconcile the father he knew with the killer being described. Frank continued. In 1970, our team was compromised during a mission in East Berlin. Soviet ambush. 4 men died. I was captured. Spent 10 months in a prison cell being interrogated by a KGB officer named Ivan Volkov. He tried to break me, get me to reveal operational details. Betray my country, I refused. He used pliers on my fingernails. Electrical shocks, water torture, everything in the manual and some things that were not. How did you survive? Stubbornness, and the knowledge that if I broke, good men would die, so I held on. And eventually a SEAL team extracted me. I came home, got my medals, got my scars, and went back to work. Back to killing. Yes, but this time I was recruited by CIA Special Activities Division, Black Ops, the missions that never happen. For 14 years I worked for them. Assassinations, sabotage, extractions. Anywhere in the world they needed someone disappeared, they sent me. I was good at disappearing people. Frank paused, gathered his thoughts. This was the hard part, the part that made him ashamed. In 1985, I was given an order, terminate a United States Army captain named James Wu, who was trying to expose the truth about POWs left behind in Soviet facilities. Men we had abandoned, men still in prison camps years after operations ended. Wu was my friend, my cellmate for 4 months in East Berlin, shared my cell, kept me sane when the torture got too bad. He was trying to do the right thing, trying to bring our people home. And they ordered you to kill him. Yes, I refused, told my handler that some lines could not be crossed, that we did not murder our own people just to protect political careers. The CIA gave me a choice, take a desk job and stay silent, or disappear completely with a new identity. I chose to disappear. 3 weeks later, James Wu died in a car accident. They killed him anyway, and I did nothing to stop it. Michael absorbed this. So you became Frank Callahan, plumber. I became no one, just a man who fixed pipes and kept his head down. Met your mother, Margaret. She was a teacher, kind, patient, everything I was not. We got married, had you. And for a while I thought I could be normal, thought I could leave the violence behind. But nightmares do not care what you want. PTSD does not respect your attempts at normal life. I would wake up screaming, see blood on my hands that was not there. Your mother tried to help, tried to understand. But how do you explain to someone who has never killed that you cannot forget the faces, that they visit you every night? Is that why you left? Your mother left me. I do not blame her. I was not a good husband, not a good father. I was a broken man pretending to be whole. It was not fair to her. Not fair to you. So she took you and built a better life. And I let her, because that was the right thing to do. You could have fought for custody, could have stayed in my life. And what would that have looked like? Weekend visits where I taught you how to kill? Where I passed on my damage to you? No, better to be a distant father, better to let you grow up without my shadow. Michael stood, walked to the window, looked out at San Diego, at the city his father had bled to protect. You know what the worst part is? I believed you were just a plumber. Just a guy who fixed toilets and never did anything interesting. I was embarrassed by you, ashamed. When my friends asked what my father did, I would mumble something and change the subject. I thought you were a failure. I was a failure as a father. No, Michael turned. You were a hero. You saved lives. You fought wars. You did impossible things, and I never knew, never appreciated it. I wasted 20 years being distant from you because I thought you were not worth knowing. I'm not a hero. Heroes do not have body counts. Everyone who serves has a body count. That is what war is. But you chose to stop. You chose to walk away from that life. That takes more courage than fighting. Frank shook his head. I did not choose. I was forced out. There is a difference. But you stayed out. For 40 years you stayed out until I needed you. Then you became that man again. Risked everything. Killed again. All to save me. That is heroism. That is fatherhood. They stood in silence, father and son, both damaged in different ways, both trying to find a way forward. The door opened. A man entered. Tall, 50s, suit and tie, government written all over him. He carried a briefcase and an expression that said he was used to being in charge. "Gentlemen, I am Deputy Director Marcus Webb, CIA. I apologize for the interruption, but we have matters to discuss." Frank recognized the name. "Marcus Webb, son of Richard Webb. You have a good memory. I saved your father's life. Hard to forget." Webb set his briefcase on the bed. "My father spoke of you often before he died. Said you were the finest operator he ever met. Said you had a conscience in a business that did not value such things. He always regretted what happened to you, the way the agency treated you after you refused that order." Ancient history. Not so ancient. That order came from Assistant Director Mark Crowley, the same man who has been protecting Ivan Volkov for the past 5 years, taking bribes, blocking investigations. We have been building a case against him for months. Your actions in Tijuana gave us the final pieces we needed. Crowley was arrested yesterday. He will spend the rest of his life in prison. Good. Webb opened his briefcase, pulled out more documents. "The agency would like to make amends for how you were treated. We are offering you full reinstatement, back pay for 50 years, restoration of your security clearance, and a position training the next generation of CDI operators. You would be valuable, your experience, your skills. We need men like you." Frank laughed. The sound hurt his damaged throat. "I am 72 years old. I can barely walk. My body is held together with surgical screws and prayers. I am not training anyone." "Then consult, advise, share your knowledge. The offer is genuine." "And if I refuse?" "Then you refuse. You owe us nothing. This is an offer, not an obligation." Frank looked at the documents, at the promise of recognition, of being acknowledged for the things he had done in the dark, of having his real name restored instead of living as Robert Mitchell, retired electrician. "No," Frank said. "I am done with that life. I chose to walk away once. I choose it again. Let Frank Callahan stay dead. Let me be nobody." Webb nodded, not surprised. "I expected that answer. My father would have said the same thing." He closed his briefcase. "But if you change your mind, the offer stands, for as long as you live." He left, Frank and Michael alone again. "You should have taken it," Michael said. "The recognition, the money, you earned it." "I earned a lot of things. Most of them I do not want." "What do you want?" Frank thought about that. What did he want? For 40 years he had wanted to forget, to be normal, to live without blood on his hands. But that had never worked. The past always found him, always pulled him back. "I want to know my son," Frank said finally. "I want to spend whatever time I have left being your father. Not a plumber, not a spy, not a killer, just a father, if you will let me." Michael's eyes filled with tears. He tried to blink them away. Failed. "I would like that. Even though I am broken? Even though I wake up screaming? Even though I will never be the father you deserved? You are the father I have. That is enough." Frank held out his hand. Michael took it. They sat like that for a long time, not talking, just being present. Two men who had spent too many years apart trying to figure out how to be together. 3 weeks later, Frank was discharged from the hospital. Michael drove him to a small apartment in Coronado. Nothing fancy. 1 bedroom, view of the ocean, furnished with the basics, a place to heal. "This is yours," Michael said. "Paid for 6 months. After that, we will figure something out." Frank walked through the apartment, touched the furniture, looked out the window at the Pacific. Waves rolling in forever. He had crossed that ocean so many times, going to war, coming home, going to war again. An endless cycle. "Thank you," Frank said. "For this? For everything." "Dad, I have a question. The uranium. Volkov said it was fake, that he made it up, but was he telling the truth or was that one more lie?" Frank had wondered the same thing. DEA searched for 3 more weeks after Tijuana, found nothing. Either it never existed or it is hidden so well no one will ever find it. Either way, there is nothing more we can do. "That does not bother you, not knowing?" "I have lived with not knowing for most of my life. One more mystery will not kill me." Michael smiled. "I have to get back to base. Briefings, debriefings. They are keeping the SEAL team together. Harris is recovering. Nguyen is fine. Rodriguez is being erased from the records like he never existed. That is probably for the best. Will you be okay here alone?" "I have been alone for 40 years. I think I can manage a few more hours." Michael left. Frank stood at the window and watched the sunset over the ocean. Orange and red, the colors of fire, the colors of blood. Beautiful and terrible. His phone rang. The new phone, the Robert Mitchell phone. He answered. Mr. Mitchell? A woman's voice. Professional, polite. This is Barbara Chen from Coronado Community Services. We have an opening for a volunteer position, working with veterans, PTSD counseling. Your name was referred to us by someone who thought you might be qualified. Are you interested? Frank almost said no, almost hung up. Then he thought about James Wu, about all the men who had not made it home, about all the damage that war left behind. Yes, Frank said, I am interested. Wonderful. Can you come in next Monday? We will go over the details. I will be there. Frank ended the call, looked at his reflection in the window. An old man stared back, scarred, broken, but still breathing, still trying. Maybe that was all anyone could do. Keep trying, keep moving forward, keep choosing to be better than your worst moments. The apartment door opened. Frank spun, hand reaching for a weapon that was not there. Old instincts die hard. Michael stood in the doorway. Forgot my keys. Sorry, did not mean to startle you. You did not. A lie, but a kind one. Hey, Dad, I was thinking. Maybe we could have dinner once a week. Nothing fancy. Just us. Catch up. Talk about things that do not involve bullets. I would like that. Good, because I have 20 years of questions, and you have the rest of your life to answer them. Michael left for real this time. Frank was alone again, but it felt different now. Not lonely, just quiet. The good kind of quiet, the kind that came after the storm. Frank opened a drawer. Inside was a small box. He had carried it through the hospital, through the move, had not opened it yet, did not know if he could. He opened it now. Inside was a medal, Bronze Star, awarded in 1971 for actions in East Berlin, details classified, and beneath it, dog tags, his real dog tags, the ones that bore his real name before he became Frank Callahan, before he became Robert Mitchell. Frank held the medal, felt the weight of it, all the things it represented, the men he had saved, the men he had killed, the wars he had fought, the wars he had lost. He had spent 40 years trying to bury these things, trying to forget. But maybe forgetting was the wrong goal. Maybe the goal was to remember, to carry it, to let it shape you without letting it destroy you. Frank closed the box, put it back in the drawer, but he did not lock it, did not hide it, just left it there. Part of his past, part of who he was. The sun finished setting, night fell over San Diego. Somewhere in the city, people were living their lives, going to movies, having dinner, falling in love. Completely ordinary things that Frank had given up his ordinary life to protect. He thought about what Volkov had said, about legacy, about being remembered. The old Russian had wanted to be infamous, to be feared, to leave a mark on the world. Frank wanted something different. He wanted to be forgotten, to fade into the background, to be just another old man in a city full of old men. No medals, no recognition, no story worth telling. But he also wanted his son. And maybe you could not have both. Maybe being a father meant being known, being present, being there even when it was hard. Frank's phone buzzed, a text message from Michael. Dinner next Friday, 7 p.m., my place. I am cooking. It will be terrible, but you have to eat it anyway. That is what families do. Frank smiled. Type back. I will be there. 3 months passed. Frank settled into his new life. Robert Mitchell, retired electrician. He volunteered at the Veterans Center 3 days a week. Listened to younger men talk about their wars. Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria. Different wars, but the same damage. The same nightmares. The same struggle to come home when part of you stayed on the battlefield. He had dinner with Michael every Friday. Sometimes they talked about the past. Sometimes they talked about the future. Sometimes they just sat in comfortable silence, learning how to be father and son after 2 decades of distance. Frank's voice never fully recovered. He spoke in a permanent whisper now. The doctors said it was as good as it would get. Frank did not mind. He had said enough in his life. Maybe it was time to listen instead. One Friday evening, Michael arrived at Frank's apartment looking nervous. He held an envelope, plain, white, official looking. Dad, I need to show you something. Frank took the envelope. Inside was a commendation from the Secretary of the Navy, awarded to SEAL Team 5 for actions in defense of American citizens against terrorist threats. Details classified. Ceremony scheduled for next month. They are giving us medals, Michael said, for Tijuana, for stopping Volkov. The official story says we were tracking a terrorist cell, that we prevented an attack on American soil. No mention of you, no mention of the real details, just another classified mission. That is how it should be. But it is not fair. You did more than any of us. You should be recognized. I am recognized by you. That is enough. Michael sat down. There is something else. The ceremony, they want family there. Mom is gone, but you are still here. I would like you to come, not as Frank Callahan, not as Robert Mitchell, just as my father. Would you do that? Frank thought about it. A room full of Navy brass, admirals, politicians, people who might recognize his face, might remember rumors of a SEAL who became CIA and then disappeared. Risky, dangerous, everything he had spent 40 years avoiding. Yes, Frank said, I will be there. The ceremony was held at Naval Base Coronado, the same base where Frank had worked as a plumber for 12 years, where he had fixed toilets in the same buildings where SEALs trained. Coming back felt strange, like visiting a life he had abandoned. Michael met him at the gate. Both of them wore suits, civilians, just a father and son attending a military ceremony. Nothing unusual. The auditorium was packed. Families, officers, enlisted, everyone dressed in their finest. Frank and Michael sat in the back. Away from attention, Frank kept his head down, watched from the shadows. The ceremony was standard. Speeches about valor, about sacrifice, about the men who stand between civilization and chaos. Frank had heard it all before, had believed it once. Now he just listened and tried not to think about the faces of the men he had killed. Michael's name was called. He walked to the stage, stood at attention. The Secretary of the Navy pinned a medal to his chest, shook his hand, said something Frank could not hear. Michael smiled, saluted, returned to his seat. After the ceremony, families gathered for photos. Michael's team stood together. Harris, Nguyen, three men who had survived something most people would never understand. They were laughing, joking, the way soldiers do when they survive, when they come home. An older officer approached Frank, admiral stars on his uniform, face lined with age and authority. He looked at Frank for a long moment, studied his face. I know you, the admiral said, not your name, but I know you, the way you stand, the way you watch. You are military. Frank said nothing. Let the admiral draw his own conclusions. You are Michael Callahan's father. Yes. He is a fine officer, a credit to the Navy. You must be proud. I am. The admiral extended his hand. Frank shook it. The grip was firm, the kind of handshake between men who had seen combat. Thank you for your service, the admiral said. Whatever it was, wherever it was, thank you. He walked away. Left Frank standing there with something he had not felt in 40 years. Recognition. Not the official kind, not medals or ceremonies. Just one warrior acknowledging another. One man who had been there understanding another man who had been there. It was enough. Michael found him in the parking lot. Ready to go? Yes. They drove back to Frank's apartment, stopped for burgers on the way, ate in the truck, like they used to when Michael was 10 years old and they would go fishing. Before the divorce, before the distance, before everything fell apart. Dad, can I ask you something? Anything. Do you regret it? The life you lived, the things you did? Frank thought about that. Did he regret it? The killing, the lying, the decades of hiding, the family he had lost. I regret the cards, Frank said. I regret what it took from me, what it took from your mother, from you. But the work itself, no, I did what needed to be done. Saved people who needed saving, stopped men who needed stopping. It was not pretty, it was not clean, but it was necessary. Would you do it again if you had to choose? I hope I never have to make that choice again. But if I did, yes, I would do it again, because someone has to stand in the gap. Someone has to be willing to do the hard things, the things that keep people safe, even if it costs everything. They finished their burgers in silence, drove the rest of the way home. When they reached Frank's apartment, Michael turned off the engine but did not get out. I love you, Dad. I do not say that enough, but I do. Love you. I love you too, son, more than you know. Michael left. Frank climbed the stairs to his apartment. His knee hurt, his back hurt, everything hurt, but he was smiling. Inside the apartment, Frank made coffee, sat by the window, watched the ocean. The waves never stopped, never paused, just kept rolling in. Forward motion, always forward. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. Frank answered. Mr. Mitchell, this is Marcus Webb, CIA. I apologize for calling so late. What do you want? To inform you that we completed our investigation into Captain James Wu's death. The official record now reflects that he was murdered by elements within the CIA to prevent exposure of classified operations. He has been posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor. His name has been cleared. There will be a ceremony at Arlington next month. His family will be there. I thought you would want to know. Frank's hand tightened on the phone. Thank you for telling me. There is more. We found documents, dating back to 1980, proving that the prisoners Wu was trying to expose were real, that we did abandon Americans in Soviet facilities, that he was telling the truth. The agency is publicly acknowledging this, compensating families. It is too late for most of them, but it is something. Why are you telling me this? Because you were right. 40 years ago, you made the right choice. Refusing that order, walking away. You stood for something when the rest of us compromised. I wanted you to know that. Wanted you to know that James Wu is being honored, and it is because you refused to be part of the cover-up. Frank said nothing, could not speak. Too many emotions, too many years. Sleep well, Mr. Mitchell, you earned it. Webb ended the call. Frank sat in the dark, thought about James Wu, about the man who had kept him sane in a prison cell, who had shared his rations, who had believed in doing the right thing even when it was hard. James was being honored. Finally, after 40 years of lies, Frank raised his coffee cup, a toast to a dead friend. You were a better man than me, James. You always were. Outside, the ocean rolled on. Inside, an old warrior finally allowed himself to rest. The wars were over. The battles were won and lost. And Frank Callahan, or Robert Mitchell, or whoever he was now, could finally stop running. He had found something he thought was lost forever. Peace, not the absence of war, but the acceptance of what he had been, what he had done, and the choice to be something different going forward. An old man learning how to be a father, how to be ordinary, how to live with ghosts instead of being haunted by them. It was not much, but it was enough. And for the first time in 72 years, Frank Callahan closed his eyes and slept without nightmares. The janitor's last war was over, and he had won the only battle that mattered. The one for his soul. The end.